Hey, hello, folks. How's it going? We're going to get started here in about a minute and 30 seconds. Hope everybody's having a good day today. And once again, let me do a shout out to Melky. Shout out, Melky. Thank you so much for the raid earlier. Really appreciated it. We'll see if that works. There we go. All right, we're going to get started here in about 1 minute. Thank you for the follow, Lizine. Also, thank you, Azrael and Anna the Lost. Hey, Dion. Hey, Brown. Hello, everyone, indeed. Happy Sunday, Arwen. Good to see you. Hey, Iced Fire. Good to see you. All right. Y'all are early birds today. I love it. Hey, Anna. Welcome. Welcome, Najim. All right. So the counter has counted down, and we are going to dive right in today. It's great to see everyone. Massive turnout. Thank you once again, Melky, for the raid right before I got started. Timing was a little off, but I appreciate the spirit. Thank you so much. Oh, you like the shirt? Yeah, I like the shirt too. PlayStation for life, baby. Dion says, happy to finally be back with 100 devs. Lost my job on Friday. Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that. Now I get to dedicate 100% of my time to 100 devs. That's awesome. I love the dedication. I'm sorry you lost your job, but I'm sure you'll be able to get an even better one. Hey, Laylo. All right, so what are we doing today? Well, today we are going to do an Ask Me Anything coffee chat type of stream. We haven't done one of these in a while, and what I've been hearing from some folks who are newer to 100 devs or newer to the industry, newer to the tech coding job hunt type thing in general, is that they've never done a coffee chat before. They're not comfortable with it, the concept of it. They aren't comfortable approaching people. They aren't comfortable asking these questions. And sometimes maybe asking the hard or uncomfortable questions, about what is the industry really like? What are people's backgrounds like? What do they struggle with? That type of thing. And so I want to be that person that you can ask those questions to. But this doesn't have to be a super serious chat in general. You can ask me whatever you want, as long as it's appropriate. Please be respectful. Please keep things appropriate. Um, and other than that, it's pretty much fair game. About whatever you want to ask me is up to you. And if we go off on some tangents, that's fine too. We're going to talk about whatever we want today. Yeah, Lazine. Yeah. Check out the 100 Devs website and Discord. It's a really great community where you can learn how to code and then learn how to get a job with your new coding skills. Oh, Dev, thank you so much for the sub. Wow. I'm going to pin that. The alert didn't fire, but I'm going to pin your sub message to the top of chat because you deserve it. Thank you so much, Dev. And Quinsop, also, thank you. I'm going to pin your message as well. They should both. Oops. There we go. Both pin. Thank you both so much. I really appreciate it. All right, so fire away. What questions do you have? You can think about this like a coffee chat if you want to ask me questions about being a dev or working in tech, or whatever you want to ask is up to you. Lazine says, I'd love to be a web dev one day. Well, then 100 Devs is a great place to start. The best thing about it, and my favorite thing about it, is that it's free. So just like all the content that you watch here on Twitch, it's free, and you should not have to pay or go into debt to learn the things that you're excited about and learn what you want to learn. Um, and that's one of the big tenets of 100 Devs is that education should be free. You should not have to pay for this stuff. You shouldn't have to drop 10 grand on a boot camp. Um, Now you can. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. If that is something you truly want to do, you can drop 10 grand on a boot camp. Ain't nobody going to stop you. But for those of you who don't want to do that, if money is the only thing holding you back from learning to code or to, getting a job in the tech industry, then you should be able to do that without money being a barrier to you. And so that's the main tenet of 100 devs. Dab says, by some miracle, the schedule allows me some minutes. I'm glad. I'm glad. It's good to see you, Dab. All right, I'm going to turn on closed captions real quick as well because I always forget to do that, and then it reminds me in my chat stream or in my chat feed. So 2 seconds. If I didn't have that reminder, I'd never do it. Not because I don't want to. I just have the memory of a goldfish. All right, there we go. Captions should be available now for anybody that wants or needs them. All right, so questions, hit me. Other than that, I'm just going to start talking. And speaking of the T-shirt, I've been on a PlayStation kick lately. I've been playing Shadow of the Colossus remastered. I like it because, well, it's one of my favorite games, but it's got you can take pauses between each Colossus and kind of start over. So I like it when I can pause a game at a place that makes sense and come back to it later. Ah, Jokanti says, any good resources to learn about design patterns? I assume you're talking about like MVC and stuff like that. Yeah, and there's lots of great YouTube channels out there. Web Dev Simplified is a pretty good one. I like a lot of their content. There's Traversy Media. What they do is a lot of times they'll teach you about a design pattern, and then they'll show you how to apply it by building something with that pattern. So it's not just conceptual, it's not just theoretical. You can, they'll say, all right, this is the pattern we're going to use, and then they show you how to apply it and build something with it. And so I really appreciate that, and it's free, also great. Ah, Evofi, welcome. Welcome to the stream, Evofi. They say, could you share a little of your background related to software engineering, 100 devs, and networking? Yeah, absolutely. So I do not have a formal computer science background. Thank you for the follow, King Adriel. Yeah, I don't have a CS degree. I didn't grow up like building HTML, CSS websites, that kind of thing. A lot of folks grew up with like Neopets and doing, HTML stuff, and I never did any of that because I didn't have good internet where I lived, and so I was very limited on the things I could do. Um, and also, my high school was very small, and not they did great for with what money they had, but they didn't have money for coding classes or you know computer classes really or anything like that. And so I came out of high school knowing how to type and use a computer, but that was kind of it. I mean, I played some CD games and stuff like that, but not too much. And so in college, I tried to take a computer class. I almost failed it. I tried to take one class on Java, and it did not go well. I was that one member of the group in the group project that nobody likes because I couldn't contribute anything. I wasn't a jerk about it. I showed up, but I didn't understand what was going on. So yeah, I kind of sucked at that. And then so I graduated thinking that, well, I like computers, but I'm not smart enough to code, and that was my thought. Luckily enough, I did get a job right out of college where I had to learn SQL, just a little bit, just a titch, just a few lines of SQL, enough, just enough to query a database to pull some data into a spreadsheet. And that was it. But being fresh out of college, what do you do when you learn something new? You put it on your resume immediately, right? And so I put SQL on my resume, and that opened up the door to a job in the production facility for an e-commerce company. That production facility was running entirely on SQL. So you better believe that I had to learn a ton of SQL super fast because I didn't know squat. And so I learned on the job. Essentially, the answer to the question about my background is, when did I learn stuff? I learned on the job. No formal education in any of this. And for those of you who don't know, SQL or SQL is a database language. It's exclusively for working with databases, for working in the back end, essentially. And so I learned some SQL at this e-commerce company. Burnt out really hard because e-commerce sucks. It just is. It's a brutal industry. It's a 24/7 industry, and I would recommend anyone to not go into it. There's some people that thrive in that kind of a work environment, but many, many, many people do not. So don't do e-commerce. Um, but I did learn a lot there. Spent 3 years there before I burnt out and couldn't do it anymore. Uh, and then I got a job using SQL in analytics uh, at a university actually. So SQL is really applicable in a lot of different industries. I started out in health insurance, went over to e-commerce, and then went into finance analytics using SQL at all those places. Um, but despite all of that, despite using SQL for several years, um, I didn't think that I could be a dev. And I say that because I didn't have a CS degree. And I thought, which I'm sure some of you out there think too, that you have to have that piece of paper with CS degree printed on it, right? To be a developer. I thought I needed that. I thought that was required. And so I thought that even though I'm writing SQL, I can't be a dev. One of my coworkers literally almost had to like push me into applying for a dev role that had become available. Um, and this was in October of 2022. She was like, "Why don't you just go be a dev already? You like computers, you like software, you're administering a bunch of software systems, like you're writing SQL. Just go do that. That's what you want to do, right?" And I'm like, "Oh, but I can't. I'm not good enough." Uh, not in that tone of voice, but you get it. And so she pushed me to apply to this developer role that was available, and I got it. It was a senior role, and I got it because for a few reasons. I actually had been working with SQL for a while. I Even though I really doubted myself really heavily, I went into the interview like I knew my shit, um, and was really had really practiced my behavioral questions. Um, and I made myself really likable, personable, and I networked with the manager beforehand. So networking is really important in landing these types of roles. And before I even applied to the role, I networked with the manager and got him to say that he would take my application out of the central pool and like watch for it, because with my background at that point, my application would have been screened out by whatever automatic processes they use because I didn't have the technical background for that role. It would have been just poof, vaporized, automatically denied. Um, but he said, "Hey, after I talked to him, he was like, "Hey, yeah, tell me when you apply. I'm going to grab your application out of the pool so it doesn't get doesn't get ignored." And so that was a major part of it too. Now I'm going to take a moment here to catch up with chat. I'm not ignoring you all. I see chat going. And then also, too, the last thing I want to say there is that after I got the dev job, I felt imposter syndrome like so bad. So if you're feeling imposter syndrome right now, thinking that you're not ready to be a dev, I was feeling imposter syndrome before I applied, during the interview process, and after I was hired, like really badly. Why did they hire me? I don't have the background. I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna suck. Like this is awful. You know, all those things. I felt that. And so part of that then was driving me to be like, okay, look, I don't have this background. I don't have this formal background. I don't know any of the theory, data structures, and algorithms. Like all I know is SQL. I don't know any other languages. I don't know anything else that's going on, like just enough SQL to do my job. And so I started looking at those boot camps, those $10,000, tuition guaranteed, whatever boot camps. And luckily, I happen to be on Reddit. I'm terminally on Reddit. On Reddit all the time. And I happen to be on Reddit at the exact time when Leon posted about the 100 Devs Cohort 2, which started in uh, January of sorry, yeah, I got hired in January of 2020, October of 2021. I apologize, I said that wrong before. And cohort two started in January of 2022. So I don't know what year it is anymore. The pandemic has permanently messed up my sense of time. Um, yeah, but anyway, there you go. I got my first job as a dev about 2 months before cohort 2 started, and I was taking cohort 2 while I was also learning my new job. So there's a lot going on there, but I'm still glad I did it. Web dev has nothing to do with what I do with what I do for my day job. For my day job, I work as a SQL dev. I write database code, but I'm still really glad to learn web development, and it's been super valuable to do the course. And Deb says, Shadow of the Colossus is in my top 10. Yeah, it's so good. I love it. Brownskill says, how do you approach people on Twitter for coffee chats? I don't feel comfortable. Just send them a message. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? It's one of those things. You're not going to burn any bridges if you ask politely, right? If you say, hey, and some folks in their Twitter bios will even have their Calendly posted, or they'll have a pinned tweet in their Twitter bio. They'll have a tweet pinned with their Calendly on it. They'll say open to coffee chats. So look for those types of things. You could even search like coffee chats on Twitter. And you'll find people who have their Calendly pinned in their bio, who have a pinned tweet talking about coffee chats, who are advertising coffee chats all the time. Devs want to talk to newer folks. They want to be that person that helps guide them a little bit. And so I would do that. I would look for those people that are advertising their openness for coffee chats and just pick a slot on their Calendly. Tim Mahoney says, can you tell us how you got your first freelance client? Yeah. So I just told everybody that, hey, I can do web pages now. Like, that's something I can do for anybody that wants. I told my family. I told everybody. I was like, hey, this is a thing. Do you know anybody that needs a website? And it so happened that one of my relatives had a coworker whose wife needed a website for her business. So it was like a third degree of separation or whatever. And so I feel like the best way to approach that is to just tell everybody and say, hey, do you need a website, or do you know anybody that does? And because it was like a connection of a connection of a connection that got me that first client. T Money says, where do you see yourself 7 years from now? Still being a dev. That's what I like. And honestly, I like working with SQL. I like being a SQL dev. I like the back end. It's so chill. Man, the back end is chill. Except when something breaks, then it's not. But most of the time, it's so chill. And you don't have to worry about how anything looks. You just have to worry about how efficient it is. Like, can it deliver the data efficiently? Then who cares how it looks? Appearance doesn't matter. Just like in real life, appearance shouldn't matter, right? It's all about how well does it work, how well does it perform, can it deliver the data quickly and efficiently. And so that's why I like the back end. I know it's not for everybody, but Chris says chasing down them lizards in Shadow. Oh yeah, yep, shooting arrows at lizards. Anna says, do you think text-based networking is, yeah, text-based networking is totally possible. DM folks on Twitter. Um, that's usually how it starts, and then I think you build a better connection if you're able to voice chat with people. But I mean, hey, if you can't do that for whatever reason, then do the next best thing and talk through text. Dav says, I didn't finish my question. Is it useful to learn GraphQL before polishing SQL? My opinion, I would get good at SQL before GraphQL, because, and I say this only because I am biased because I work with SQL, but SQL is far more widespread than GraphQL. SQL has many more applications. It has wider use cases. It's the thing that people are going to be more familiar with. It's a buzzword that people recognize. And so I would get good at SQL first and then scale up into GraphQL. But that's just me. Diomai says, my parents and I took a DOS course back in the day. That's awesome. Anna says, yeah, I still have that CS degree needed mindset. I'm trying to break it. Yeah. So let me tell you something. I work on a team of 7 people at work. And out of that team, I think only one of us, and it's not me, only one of the people on the team actually has like a CS degree, like an actual piece of paper that says bachelor's degree CS in it. All the rest of us come from all different backgrounds. My manager has a degree in sociology, and he's a great developer. Um, one of my really valuable coworkers has a degree in, like, it was English and journalism, I think. I think his degree is English and journalism, or maybe just journalism. I don't remember. But what's cool about that is he's great at documentation because he has literally, like, that's his what his degree is in, and so he brings those skills. He brings the dev skills that he already has, and then he also brings his formal background in journalism to make just kick-ass documentation, which is great. Tech says that piece of paper really doesn't mean much. Yeah, absolutely. And job postings will say stuff like, ooh, CS degree or similar, right? But like, if you can bring your skills, then that's not going to matter too much. And one of my coworkers who's not on my team, but who I've worked with in the past, um, she is like an expert in a really specific tool that we use at work. Like, she's like the best person, like, at the entire university where I work. She is like the best, or I would say best or second best at this tool. And she doesn't even have a college degree. She graduated high school and then started working, and here she is, top of her game. So it doesn't matter. Imposter syndrome is real, absolutely. Bobby says, I'm on Reddit right now. Good start. Yeah, everybody feels imposter syndrome. I see a lot of folks saying, imposter syndrome, I'm feeling it. Oh, yeah. No matter who you are, you're going to feel it. What's important is that you don't let it own you. You can feel it. You can acknowledge that that feeling is real and valid. It's okay to feel that way. You're not bad or wrong for feeling imposter syndrome. It's important to acknowledge that and then just keep on doing what you're doing. Just keep on crushing it. Be like, yep, I feel this way. My brain is trying to tell me I'm not good enough, but that doesn't matter because I'm already doing the work, right? And sometimes a little imposter syndrome is good, right? Because it pushes you to keep striving, to keep learning, to keep bettering yourself, to never think that you are good enough, to think like, yeah, I'm doing great right now. What do I need to do to be even better? What else can I learn? What else can I do? Bobby says, I'm learning Java because I found a free program. Can't really say no. Absolutely. Free's great. Hey, Quad Shot. Do you think Brownsville says, do you think it's easy to get a remote entry level job because the pay in my country for entry level developers is $800 per month? Yeah, I've spoken to several folks who are in countries where there isn't much of a market for developers locally. And so to that, I would say that, yeah, there's plenty of remote work available from companies that are trying to, outsource work out of the US, or who are trying to establish offices in other countries. I think a really good thing you can do for yourself is to have a bomb portfolio, like the best portfolio that you can build. And so that way you can't go talk to this person in person, but what you can do is show them your kick-ass portfolio with all your best work on it. And you can advertise that portfolio on Twitter. You can put yourself out there in the digital space. And then, that's going to get eyes on you, be like, wow, this person has some skills. So if you're going for like a full stack type job, I think that's one of the best things you can do for yourself is to really curate your portfolio and your social media presence. And Peel says, SQL love, absolutely. Is no good wow. Is no good wow says, aren't you afraid of AI? No, I'm not. What I am is embracing AI. It's not going away. There's no use being afraid of it because it's not going anywhere. Um, Again, just my opinion. I think the best thing that we can do as devs is to understand the tools that are available to us, such as ChatGPT, and how we can leverage those tools, like learn how to use them and leverage them as assets to do our job even better, to make ourselves valuable in this changing environment. Lex says, welcome to the stream, by the way. Lex says, I keep almost reaching out to folks for coffee chats, but then get anxious because I don't know what to say once we get on the call. That's okay. You can think about it like you don't have to be a certain way on a coffee chat. The best thing you can do is to get that person talking about themselves. Ask them questions about their background. Ask them questions about, so, how long have you been a developer? Did you have a CS degree? What's your day-to-day job like? What do you like about your job? What do you not like about your job? What do you want to do in 5 years? Um, so you can have some of those kind of questions like ready to ask, but the best benefit that you can have for yourself in a coffee chat is to ask a question, get them talking, and then listen to their answer. That's what a lot of folks forget is they'll have like a list of questions like printed out, and then they'll ask their question, wait for the person to stop talking, and then go to the next question. And then they ask the next question, wait for the person to stop talking, go to question three. They'll ask it like it's a quiz. And the best thing you can do is ask a question to get the person talking, listen to their answer, and then ask a follow up based on what they've said. That's how you establish the flow of a conversation. Now, if the person, gives like a yes or no response to your question, you could always just go on to the next one and see if you can get them kind of flowing from there. It's okay to go on to the next question if you don't get anything you can use from their first answer. But how you establish a conversation is you ask an opener, get them talking, and then ask follow-ups based on what they've said. And that way you don't have to worry about preparing or coming up with a list. You can just have a couple of good openers. You can have them written down or taped to your monitor or whatever, it doesn't matter. And then ask follow-ups, listen to them and ask follow-ups based on what they've said. Quad Chat says, hello, Mindwolf. Can you tell us the story of your name when it's appropriate? Absolutely. I was like 12, and my internet sucked at home. I already mentioned, like, I didn't grow up with good internet. And so, really, all I could do was go on to like text-based forums, the old style forums where you'd have threads and posts, like before Reddit was a thing. And so I had this book I really liked. Once again, as a reminder, I was like 12. I had this book I really liked. It was about wolves. And so there was a forum where you could pretend to live in the world of the book and be wolves. And so, hence, my character was named Mayan Wolf, and the name has stuck around since I was 12. So, there you go. It was cringy, teenage, you know, wolf based text role playing type stuff. Yeah, that was it. That was fun. Those were fun times. I don't regret it. It taught me how to be a better writer. Quadchat says, how did you learn SQL? On the job, baby. Never took any classes on it. Anything. I learned SQL as I needed it for the jobs that I was doing. Uh, Personally, this is just me talking. Um, Everybody has a different learning style. Some people can sit in a classroom and listen to someone talk, and then that sparks their desire for knowledge, and they pick up the material, and they self-educate by reading books and stuff like that. That's not how I roll. Unfortunately, I kind of have to have a practical application for the things that I'm learning. Somebody has to deliver the information or give me a task and then say, do this to get it done, right? And then I go and I do the task. I build the thing. Um, and so for me, learning on the job works great because I'm given a task, I'm given an end date when I have to have that task done, and I'm given a set of tools to accomplish that task. And you give me those things, I will learn whatever the heck you want. And that's what I liked so much about 100 Devs is that it is really structured around introducing a topic and then having you immediately apply that topic to a real world project. And that absolutely fits my learning style to a T. That's why I was really able to get into 100 Devs and learn web development, even though it has nothing to do with my day job. Phil says, my biggest concern is I'm aging a bit and might not get interviews due to that. I'm not going to deny that ageism is sometimes a factor in interviews. I think you may be well served by the remote environment, given that your skills will lead that discussion, right? Rather than there's always, unfortunately, bias is real, right? You're going to walk into a job interview and people are going to immediately make assumptions or uh, draw conclusions based on the way you look. The nice thing about remoteness is that you can be on a phone call with somebody, right, an interviewer, and the only thing that they're gonna have to judge you on is your voice, which is not you can't really age somebody based on their voice. Um, and they're going to have your voice, and then they're going to have your skills. And so I think the remote environment is well served for folks that are, maybe have a difference in appearance, maybe have a difference in age, that sort of thing. Yeah, so psychology degree. Yeah, if you're going to trust anybody on, that you don't need a CS degree to get into tech, hey, trust Dav. I told you about my coworkers. None of them having CS degrees. Yeah, it's so real. Tech is an open book to anybody that has the skills. Quadchat says my BF from high school has an English degree from a party college and is now the finance manager for a Fortune 500 company. Absolutely, that's the thing. Is a lot of that is, it's networking. It's some of it is luck. I'm not going to deny that. Some of it is luck, but you can tip the odds in your favor if you're good at networking or make yourself good at networking. If you look for connections, if you look for opportunities rather than waiting for them to come to you. Diane says, my cousin is currently in college for CS. He just finished his second year and is lacking a lot of the stuff we learned in the first 3 or 4 months at 100 devs. I told him to work on 100 devs this summer to prepare him for next semester. Yeah. Um, College is good for some things, but what it is not necessarily good for is real world, like what the real world is like and what it's going to throw at you and the type of skills that you need to develop to network and build real stuff. Theory definitely has its place, right? Theory is important for continuing the understanding and growing knowledge and coming up with new tools and solutions. But you also need to balance that with real world applications. And that's unfortunately something that college is not always great at. Some universities are getting better at that with, like applied programs. For those like us, like me, who prefers to apply skills that I've learned immediately. But there's still a long way to go there. Quadchat says it's hard because government jobs often have degree prereqs and no experience. Yeah, so yeah, there are some that are hardline. Gov jobs tend to be maybe a little bit more hardline on the specific requirements. But there's plenty of jobs out there that are going to be flexible because they're desperate for people. Mr. Carson asks, I assume you're talking about being a dev. Is it really a lot of Google searching? Absolutely. I Google every day, man. I also ask ChatGPT to help me. Um, I'll have a SQL query that I've built and it's not working and I don't know why. And I will just dump the entire query into ChatGPT and say, hey, ChatGPT, why isn't my query working? And it will point out the error and it will tell me, the right thing to do and it will tell me why. And that's the best part. Hey, Bix, welcome to the stream. Jokan says, I have an agricultural degree, and now I'm working as a backend developer. That's rad. Third Decade says, what are the best remedies for imposter syndrome? Yeah, just keep swimming. You can acknowledge that feeling, but don't let it overwhelm you. Don't let it self sabotage you to the point where you prove it right. Bix says, I'm a noob in JS. I was wondering why would I keep an element in HTML if I can create them from JS. Can you give an example of what you mean there? Because separation of concerns is important. In it depends on what you're building and what you're doing, but generally separation of concerns is important to keep your code streamlined, to keep your code fixable later. And there's certain things that you kind of have to do in HTML. So I'm curious what you mean there. Yeah, AI will be like having a permanent coding partner. It will help us code faster and learn faster. Absolutely. Mr. Carson says, as an introvert, I get anxiety thinking about reaching out for a coffee date for networking. It's fine. That's normal to feel that way. the best thing you can do is to, again, it's like imposter syndrome. You can feel that and you can acknowledge, yes, I'm feeling anxious right now. I'm feeling anxious because I haven't really done coffee chats before. And then you can, then what you can do is say, hey, I haven't done coffee chats before. So the way to resolve this anxiety is by doing some coffee chats, thus reducing the anxiety I have around coffee chats. It's it's like a cycle, right? You feel anxious, but then you go ahead and you do the coffee chat anyway, and now you know what to expect, you know what's going to happen, you know how it's going to make you feel, and then you say, okay, I want to do another coffee chat to reduce this feeling even more. And so you feel anxious, but then now you know what's going to happen, and so you do another coffee chat, it goes slightly better, so then next time you feel slightly less anxious. So you have to tackle that anxiety uh, by just doing it. um, and it's okay to feel that way. There's nothing wrong with feeling that way, but you just have to do it till you get the routine. You know what to expect. You know how it makes you feel, and then it will reduce over time. Yeah, and Chris says if you need ideas of stuff to talk about, you can also talk about your previous professional experiences. Yep, you could curate your story and how it relates in your journey. Absolutely. If the person you're coffee chatting with ask you about your background, you could say, talk about, it doesn't matter if you don't have a CS background. I've talked to so many cool people. When I ask them about their background, they're like, oh, yeah, I was a woodland firefighter, or I ran a restaurant, or I don't know, I was a kindergarten teacher. And I'm just like, wow, that is so freaking cool. Like, and now you're doing this, and you're going to bring so many cool things to your career because you have such a cool, unique background. Like, it doesn't matter what you used to do. You don't have to feel ashamed about it. You can, people are going to think that's super cool and interesting to hear about if you share your background. MKE says, how long have you been working as a SQL dev? I've been working as a SQL dev since October of 2021. But before that, I was using SQL, but in more of an analytics capacity. So SQL is cool because you can apply it to a lot of different industries. It's been around since 1977. Um, it's a very old. It's one of the oldest languages that's still in wide use today. There are older languages, but they often fall out of use. Um, and SQL is an oldie but a goodie. It's still in use, and so it's in use across a bunch of different industries. Also, thank you for the follows, everybody. Hey Ports, Sparky892. I'm sure I missed a few folks. Crank, uh, Cran Catlow Westbolt. Thank you also. Mr. Carson says, I'm watching a lot of videos to learn React and taking a lot of notes. When it's time to build something, I draw a complete blank. What you might try doing is watch a tutorial on how to build a simple project, right? And then take that project that you build, don't just do the tutorial and then stop. Take that build and modify it. Build something else with it. Build something similar using the tutorial as a base. That can be a nice jumping off point to say, oh yeah, I have this structure now. I want to take this and somebody told me that so a couple of weeks ago we built a shopping cart for a store, a fake store that sold kittens. We built it in React here on stream. So somebody told me that they took what we built, and they modified it to completely change the appearance, to sell a different product, but it was all based on the tutorial. So they did the tutorial first that we did here on stream, and then they modified it completely to sell something else, to look different, to do something different. So that's their own work, right? And that inspired them to build something different. Yeah, and Quadshot says, practice turning all your tragedies and weaknesses into strengths. Absolutely. Software engineering depends on mental adaptability and a positive cooperative attitude. Absolutely. Those of us with a certain age have lots of life experience. Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. It's all about adaptability, creativity, um, the ability to learn new skills, to cooperate well with others. Yeah. Google Stack Overflow, ChatGPT, Copilot. Yep. Vixis says, I don't understand the separation of concerns because I'm a total beginner. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with not understanding something. Separation of concerns is basically just when we take things that perform different functions and we keep them separate from each other. So, for example, taking keeping style separate from function, right? Or keeping style separate from logic. And so that's kind of what we talk about in the simplest form when we talk about separating like JavaScript and CSS. Is that if CSS being for style, we take that and we separate it out from JavaScript, which is for logic. Now, that's not always true in every case. Separation of concerns is more of a rule of thumb, a best practice. You'll find that there's a lot of things in development that are not hard rules, but are considered more best practices. And so as you experiment, as you build more stuff, you'll learn about when do we separate things, how can we structure our builds as they get larger and more complex to make sure that we can come back later and make changes to them or work on them with a team successfully. So there's lots of different ways you can break up a build in a way that makes sense. Yeah, Krombon says, it's a relief to hear that other people struggle with anxiety about coffee chats. Yeah, 100%. You are not the only one. There's so many people that do. But the best thing about it is that they do it anyway. Hey, Issy, welcome. How's it going with your job stuff? Maybe you said later down. I'm still getting there. I'm catching up. I'm behind. I'm glad you like the shirt. I like it too. It's great. PlayStation for life, baby. Hey, Evo, thank you for the follow. Feel says, uh, separation concerns is an opinion where the boundary goes. So yeah, some of it's going to be related to your project, related to your team, how your team is working together. But you just need to acknowledge that when something makes logic, when two things perform very different functions, it may make logical sense to keep them separate from each other. B says, "What color is your Bugatti?" Well, I have a Toyota Corolla, and my Toyota Corolla is gray. Yeah, I know the luxury is almost too much to handle. Um, the glory of my base model Toyota Corolla is sometimes overwhelming, even for myself. It's just too beautiful. It has windows that go up and down when you push a button. Yeah, beat that. Yeah, it feels says I don't think AI helps me in my programming tasks at all. Okay, that's fair. But it helps me a lot writing, for example, a job. Yeah, sometimes it can be like helping you write documentation, right? Or helping you write an email. It doesn't necessarily have to be related to programming. It can help you in other things as well. All right, Dav, thank you for being here. I appreciate seeing you. Thank you, Dav. Text says that's why I don't like React. Separation of concerns is not there nearly. So the React docs talk a little bit about that, about separation of concerns. And it's just a different way to think about it, right? I think with a lot of these programming topics, it's important not to be too rigid in your application of the letter of the law, right? A lot of these things are just suggestions. The points, it's like whose line is it anyway? The points are made up and the rules don't matter, right? I think React is kind of just a different application of separation of concerns. It's more about with React, the separation of concerns is more about is this affecting the user experience? Is this making changes to the user experience and what the user sees? All right, then we can dump that in some React files here. And then your backend is probably going to be a separate API, right? That's not directly affecting the user experience or the user interface. React is all about making an adaptive user interface, and that does require logic to change how that user interface looks at any given moment. And so it's just a different application of the separation of concerns. If that's bothering you, I believe the React documentation, the React docs, do have a section on that, and their justification of the separation of concerns and how it applies in React. Quadshot says Toyota Corolla is the new Ferrari. Hell yeah. Chris says Toyota fam. I have a dark blue. That's awesome. Yeah, I kind of wish mine wasn't gray, but hey, it works. Goha says, I just bought a Toyota RAV4 for my family. First time owning a Toyota. I hope I don't regret. Honestly, I've had my Toyota for, what year is it? I've had my Toyota for 14 years, um, and it hasn't done me wrong. So, Fuel says it's cheaper to not own a car. Well, Fuel, let me tell you, I live in the good old US of A, which has zero infrastructure. And so I gotta have a car. Unfortunately, I wish I didn't. I wish I could just jump on a train or a tube or a bus, uh, and go wherever I want to go, but I can't because USA, USA, we're the best. Oh, yeah, I can go on. And I live in a place with what would be considered good infrastructure in the United States, and I still need a car. So, you know, thank you for the follow, the machinist. I disagree that React is bloatware. I think it actually helps make your apps more efficient because in apps with a large amount of user interface and user interaction, uh, web pages are only becoming more complicated, right? More elements to click on, more elements to interact with. If there's a form in the top left of that page, and the rest of the page is all sorts of other elements. Every time I interact with that form, I don't want to have to reload the whole page. I want to save resources and be efficient by only modifying that form. And that's what React can do for you. So I definitely, it's not, do you always need to use React? Hell no. You can build anything you want without React. But I think, like with anything, React has its place and its importance. Hey, uh, Toyota's Roman Ferry, yeah, absolutely. B says, "It's my first time here. Are you self-taught or do you hold a CS degree?" I do not. I don't. I don't hold a CS degree at all. I never. I almost failed a CS class in college. I was talking about earlier. I tried to take a Java class in college and I sucked at it, like legitimately. I would have failed if I didn't have a good group project. Um, and yeah, because I didn't understand any of it. And so I didn't start learning anything code related until I was out of college and working, and started just picking up code on the job, like some SQL code on the job. And so, yeah, you don't need a CS degree to be a dev. I'm a senior developer now, and I love what I do, and I never stop learning. The tech field is unique in that it's a field of continuous learning. You're never going to know anything. You're never going to be the best in the room at anything. And I think that's the best part about it because you always have people to learn from and new things to pick up. So don't let a piece of paper stop you from getting into the industry. Mr. Carson says, I guess I have trouble figuring out what the components are supposed to do or maybe how they work. Mr. Carson, I would highly recommend um, checking out my series on React start to finish. So on my YouTube channel, exclamation point YouTube, we did an 8-part series, basically learning React from the ground up, and applying it, doing examples, and then we built a project from start to finish at the end of that course. And so it really helps you, teaches you how to think in React. Um, how do we build components? What are they for? So yeah, I would recommend just taking that approach and doing the examples, looking at the docs, practicing those examples, and thinking about how to build a component and apply that knowledge. Yeah, and Drunk Uncle Grandma has a good point. I have yet to have ChatGPT solve a 6Q code wars without a lot of help. However, it shines with find the typo, document my code, and create a markdown README. Absolutely. People are always like, "Ooh, aren't you afraid of AI?" No, ChatGPT is not smart. Um, But what it is good at is being your sidekick. You it's like you're Batman and GPT is Robin. Like Robin definitely has skills, right? But like, and I'm talking like Adam West Robin, like not Nightwing or whatever. For the comic book nerds out there, let's get pedantic, all right? But I'm talking like Adam West, Burt Ward Robin. Definitely has skills, but really can't function independently without Batman. And so, but you rely on Robin, right? Robin is important. Robin helps out, but Robin also really can't function independently. And so, if you think of it that way, like you're the superhero, ChatGPT is the sidekick, and needs guidance and help and when and where, tell them when and where to apply their skills, then I think that's a better relationship with AI as it currently exists. Caster says, "Hey, Mindwolf, I have a question regarding a web application I've built to help an MMO community in a practical way." Fire away. Yeah, ask a question. Hey, 01. What's up? Uh, one says, "I failed at math in uni because it was all BS." Hey, fair enough, right? University is not for everybody. For a while there, was pushed as the end all be all of, you know, go to university. You must. You have to. That's the only way to succeed. And I don't think that's the case anymore. Learn, stop, never. Yeah. Oh yeah, and Fuel says one thing that ChatGPT is really good at is extracting information from unstructured info. So our customers receive PDFs and emails that we can use ChatGPT to extract machine-readable data from. Yeah, that's friggin' rad, because that's what we would call like busy work or tedious work that kind of sucks to do as a human, right? And so that's the kind of things that we should be applying AI to. The things that are time consuming for no reason, that are tedious, that are repetitive. Uh, I hope that's what we can really apply AI to do. For example, if I have a SQL query that's throwing an error and I just can't find my stupid missing comma or whatever, I'm not going to waste my time looking for a missing comma. I'm going to dump it into ChatGPT and have it immediately find the problem, so I can get back to doing higher level work that ChatGPT can't do. Oh, third decade. Thank you so much for the sub. I'm pinning that. Adil says, any new tech we should look out for? Keep an eye on AI. What are the new tools available? What are the new dev tools available with AI? Try them out. Yeah, that's my main advice right now. ChatGPT plus use code pair duo. Yeah. Dr. Moto actually, he becomes Nightwing. For yeah, well, yeah, I know that Robin becomes Nightwing, but he's had to skill up to become Nightwing. And like after he became Nightwing, he was like independent. So that's why I was like, I wasn't talking about Nightwing. I just meant like, Robin, because Robin was pretty dependent on Batman. But if we're talking, we're talking sci-fi comic books, I can get as pedantic as you want. Actually, yeah. Folks are kind of also, I see a little bit of dunking on like university degrees. I don't want to write them out offhand. I think there's still a lot of usefulness to university degrees, but it helps, I think, going into university if you kind of already have like a goal in mind or like a purpose in mind. um, when I went into university, when I went to college, I didn't know what the crap I wanted to do. I had no idea, which is a bad way to go into university. Um, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't really have any passions at that time, or at least passions that I thought would help me make money. Um, and so I just kind of blundered through college, which is not the best. I did okay, like it was fine. Um, but yeah, it was maybe not the best. I didn't really have any uh, end game in mind other than me like money. And so, you know, it took me a little while to kind of find an even keel after I got out of college. Drunk Uncle Grandma says, crazy that Adam West Batman's penguin was Rocky's coach. I didn't know that. Oh, that's awesome. Very cool. Caster says, I built an application where they fill a form and the information fills up an ID card and converts HTML to a PNG. I feel like I didn't do a whole lot. What should I do? I feel like I didn't do a whole lot. Why do you feel like you didn't do a whole lot? Is it because it wasn't what you wanted to build, or you feel like you didn't do enough? There's more you want to do? Can you expand on that a little bit, Caster? Third Decade says, first time user of Prime sub. Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, my alerts like really suck, and I don't know why. It doesn't display my subs properly, and I hate that. So anytime I get a sub, I pin them to the top of chat so everybody can see for 20 minutes. It's going to be pinned up there to the top of chat because I want everybody to see when you do share your sub with me. I really appreciate that. Kiro says, "Me neither. Had no clue. I assume you're talking about going into college, and I think unfortunately that's the reality for a lot of us, right? We're told you got to go to college, and we're like, cool. I'm 18. What the heck do I know? But I guess I'm going to college. Gonna pick something, and yeah, it doesn't always work out. I think we could do better career training in high school, better introduction to careers. Colleges I think could do better at outreaching to high schools and showing the types of options that are out there. Things like polytech, applied degrees, things that are less traditional, or associate's degrees, community colleges, that type of thing. Tima says, I got this degree from MIT. Now mine will say it's useful. Useless? Absolutely not. I'm not saying that. If you want to be a biochemist, if you want to be things that do require intense research and study, and I am super in awe of folks that can do that kind of thing, that can really study and learn theory and advanced science, and make humanity better as a whole. I think that's friggin' awesome. Um, I'm not one of those people, but I like applied things. I like building things, but there's a need for both, right? We shouldn't write off other people's experiences if they don't match our own. Um, and I think that's a real danger for us as a society in trying to say that one path in life is correct, or one path in life is the right one. I think we should have ample opportunities for everybody to discover where they fit best, right? And it's not always going to be the same thing. We need to nourish the wide variety of interests, learning styles, and life goals. And I think we'll be better for it as a society if and when we're able to do that and respect that. Fuel says, I will never regret my uni degree, but I don't want uni degree to be a gatekeeper. Absolutely. It should never be that. Bobby says, hey, me like money too. Yeah. Me still like money. Me want more money. Castro says, I felt like I didn't do a whole lot of coding and did more researching since I didn't know how to convert certain parts of an HTML tag into a PNG file. Castro, did it work? Like, did it do what you wanted it to do? Then if it worked, then you didn't do it wrong. Then you did fine. It doesn't matter how much code you wrote. There's lots of days when I don't write any code. But there's lots of days when I'm working as a dev when I don't write any code and I'm literally just like copying and pasting chunks of code from other places into the right order and like changing variable names and then running it and being like, yay, it works. I'm done. Thanks. Bye. So a lot of being a developer is knowing when you don't have to write code and when you can copy and paste code from other places to do what you want to do without writing it all out. So Caster, if you went to Stack Overflow and you got all the code that you needed from a Stack Overflow answer, then congratulations, you're a dev now, because that's what we do a lot. Pamper says, I built a project, search engine project. So far, I'm only storing 7 days worth of history. I want to store all the daily collected data in a database to store historic data. Could I use a SQL database? Yeah, it just depends on how your data is structured. I think if you're storing a bunch of information about like products, I would go for a relational database in this case. And by that, I mean a SQL database. That works really well for traditionally structured data like product inventory and stuff like that. If you have an inventory of unique products, then yeah, I think a relational database would suit you really well. I mean, you could do Postgres. You could set up a Supabase database and use Postgres to hit it. Um, yeah, I would say that would be a great option. Hey, Logic, how's it going? MKE says, I'm a biochemist. Now I'm a software engineer after joining 100 Dev. That's awesome. I'm sure you bring a great and varied background to whatever career you're in. I'm sure they're lucky to have you. Uh, Kiro says, they're talking about they got front end part of 100 devs done and the CS50 course, dive into back end, and then hopefully have an idea what kind of project I want to do. Yeah, I feel like I really need a project as a showcase of skills. Yes, you do. If you've been through the front end part of 100 devs, you can build a web page and you can start building your portfolio. I would do that now. Don't wait. Don't wait. There's no threshold that you're going to cross where you're suddenly like, I can finally build things. You don't gotta wait. I would do that now. If you've done the HTML CSS part and you've done CS50, you are more than ready to set up a portfolio, start putting some static web pages on that portfolio to show off your skills, and start building your social media presence. Do that now. Don't wait. You don't have to, be a god tier developer to put a portfolio out online. Do it now. And then as you build things that are more complicated, or things that you feel reflect your skills better, then swap out something in your portfolio with the new thing. It's going to be a living reflection of your skills. And so start now. Yeah, feel so talking about Elasticsearch versus SQL. Um, I was thinking kind of about expense there, Fuel. Yeah, it sounds like based on the number of records that they're trying to deal with, that long term cheap and slow storage might be a good option. Um, just to not not be so expensive, but hey, it depends on the project, right? There's all sorts of solutions out there. You can do your research and see which one works best for the specific needs of the project. Sirius says, when can we collectively agree that higher education costs in the US is effing insane and prohibitive? Yeah. So this is kind of a semi unique problem to the US, right? Is that, like with most things, rampant unregulated capitalism means that prices can continue to be driven higher and higher. Now, um, and this is with tuition, right? One thing I will say is that this has made universities more and more competitive, meaning that universities need more and more in order to bring in more students. As the price gets higher, students are more likely to not attend university, right? And so this means that universities need to find more ways to cut costs, attract students, provide financial aid, curate courses to make them attractive to students, and all these other things. They need to basically change the way they operate. And what this means is that they need to analyze a lot of data in order to figure out, okay, what's the best strategy for us? How do we proceed forward in a cost effective way? How do we keep the university running? And what that means is that they need a lot of data to analyze. So they need to do a lot of analytics. They need a lot of data to analyze, which means they need to store a lot of data, which means they need to collect a lot of data, which means they need to have good tools to collect that data, which means that they need a lot of devs to build those tools, to manage the data storage, to do analytics, to build analytical tools, to build models, to build, you know, I don't know, presentation tools. And so universities are scrambling to build out their big data and big tech infrastructure. And so, one thing that a lot of people overlook when they're looking for a tech job is universities. And I don't mean being a student at a university, I mean working on the administrative side of a university, whether that's, working on the back end or building applications, working with AI, working with automation. All those things are places where universities are absolutely scrambling to catch up with the private sector because they need to do that in order to survive. They can't keep just blundering along and wasting money. They need to modernize their infrastructure, modernize their data collection, modernize their processes and systems. And so if you're looking for a tech job, look at universities. I tell you this as somebody who works for a university. Um, they have great culture, they have great benefits, you get tons of vacation time. Um, I, I don't know. I can't say enough about how much I value working at a university. It's a great place to work, and they are desperate for people to hire. So I'm off my soapbox there, but people always sleep on university jobs. They do, and I'm like, no, get in there, go check it out. Castro says, talking about their app, it worked in the end, and people I asked to check liked it, but a side of me feels weird about not coding much. Nah, you built it and people liked it. That's all that matters. Good job. Third Decade said, can you talk a little more about the portfolio and its role in the job search process? What kind of projects and info should you feature? Do you know of a good example to look at? Yeah, as far as portfolios go, portfolios are going to be so now that a lot of us aren't interviewing in person, right? Portfolios are now that good first impression that you want to give someone who's going to hire you. That's instead of you walking physically into a door, your portfolio is going to be the first thing that that recruiter or that hiring manager sees. And so you want it to be visually appealing, easy to navigate, and be a true showcase of the types of things you're able to do. So, whatever your most current projects are, if you have any client specific projects, if you have projects that are applicable to a particular business, right? Like, so not, I'm not talking like tic tac toe or like those, or like a calculator or like those boot camp specific type projects. I'm talking like, hey, this is a website I built for a restaurant, or this is a app I built to, help people track fitness goals, or here's a app I built to, I don't know, track prices on motorcycle helmets, stuff like that, stuff that sees a need and fills a need. Um, and that is interesting. That's something that a recruiter is going to go, oh, hey, that's pretty neat. I wonder how they did that. I want to talk to that person. And so that's kind of what your portfolio should spark interest and show a little bit about who you are as a person. Kira says, I use the HTML5 template. Great start. And build a portfolio. No real projects there at the moment. Put some on there. You're already halfway there. Just put some stuff on there. Lucian says, do you have any tips for someone still struggling with Code Wars challenges, even after doing them for a while? For example, I understand how to use array methods, but trying to figure out how to use them based off the way the challenges asked trips me up. So, Lucian, I'm going to ask you a question in return. When you are doing Code Wars, what's your process? And so let's say that you're doing a Code War, and I assume you should be doing 8 queues. So make sure you're only doing 8 queues. Don't do anything else. And if you're struggling with array methods and how to apply them, then filter those code wars down to 8 queues and array methods. You can do both. You can do those filters on code wars. You go to practice and you apply the filters that you want to apply. So filter down to those, and then you're in a code wars. You've struggled with it for about 20 minutes. Okay, I'm not going to get this one. Let me look at the answer. All right, so then you go look at the answer, and after you've looked at the answer, don't just move on. Don't say, all right, well, I didn't get that one. Time to do the next one. Go back to the question. So you've looked at the answer, right? And you're like, okay, I understand that conceptually. That makes sense. All right, go back to the question and solve it now that you know how to do it. So walk through, solve it with the end goal in mind. Even though you already know the answer, go through and solve that question. And then submit that answer, make sure you got it right. Okay, I got it right. Then note that question down and revisit that question in a week. Don't look at see if you can solve it then in a week without looking at the answer. See, okay, the kind of the process here is, all right, learn the knowledge, right? You're learning the answer. then immediately apply what you've learned. And then in a week or however many days you're comfortable with, revisit that, recall the answer, and apply it again. That's how you're going to learn. You're not going to learn by just trying to, throw yourself at question after question and just not getting it, not getting it, not getting it. Um, After enough repetition, you'll start to see patterns. You'll start to learn how to actually apply these methods and which methods work where. But what's important is that you apply what you've learned, you recall what you've learned, and you do spaced repetition. You practice, you reapply those skills over and over again until you start to get them. Mr. Carson says, Mind Wolf, have you tried GitHub Copilot? How did you like it? I'm sure I would like it. I'm not currently using it just because I'm trying to get better at things like React and TypeScript, and I don't necessarily want the code to be written for me, right? I know it would be extremely helpful in, if I was doing just vanilla JavaScript, HTML, CSS, then I think Copilot would be great because it's helping me build out the things I already know, right? It's just helping me do it faster. Like I already know what to do. It's just helping me do it faster. But for new concepts, React and TypeScript, I want to get hands on and try to remember what to apply where. And so I'm not currently using Copilot. But that doesn't mean I think it's a bad thing. Logic J says, "Wonder if universities require a degree." No, they don't. Not so. I was talking earlier. That most of my coworkers, except for one, don't have a CS degree, including myself, and we all work at the same university. And then one of my other coworkers, who's not on my team, doesn't have a college degree of any kind. Um, they have a high school degree, so and they are extremely accomplished in their role. Also, too, a great thing about working at universities that I didn't mention before is that many of them have really robust education benefits. So if you decide, hey, I'm already working here, but I want to go after that CS degree, or I want to go after, I don't know, whatever, an English degree, journalism degree, master's degree, PhD, whatever. Many universities will pay you or reimburse you to pursue that degree or take a certain number of credit hours per semester for free. Um, I got my master's degree for free from my employer, which is the university that I work at. They said, "Hey, you want to go take that master's degree online? Go for it. We'll pay for it." And so my university paid for my master's degree because I wouldn't have done it if they weren't paying for it. Honestly, it was one of those things that was like, this will look awesome to have, but if I got to pay for it, I'm not going to do it because I don't necessarily need it. It was something I wanted, but not something I needed. Quinsab says, "Do uni offer their employees tuition breaks as a benefit?" Yep, just like I talked about, many of them do. What they offer will vary by university, but I would say almost all of them have some kind of educational benefit. And yeah, and also Quadshot mentions too, oftentimes that benefit extends to spouses and children. So I know of some of my coworkers who have really taken advantage of that benefit. Now, I myself don't have children or a significant other, so I can't tell you exactly the quality of that benefit, but I do know that several of my coworkers have used those employment benefits to get reduced tuition for their children and or spouses. Yeah, and there can also be that sort of a similar reimbursement for government jobs as well. Lucen says, I need to start doing that. Talking about, so we were talking about how to solve Code Wars problems. That's the one thing I wasn't doing. I was just trying to brute force the question. Now, if you're just brute forcing things over and over, going to a new question each time, all that's going to do is it's sort of like it's sort of like trying to dig a hole, right? Or trying to dig in a mine. So if you just keep trying to barrel forward and swinging your pickaxe at a new wall each time, all it's going to do is make your arm tired and blunt your axe, right? And if you go back and stack up some rubble and try to refine your technique and get better at that swing, you're going to be able to, if you just keep practicing that your technique over time, then when you go back to that wall later on and try to mine it, you'll find it's much easier. That was a weird analogy, but I hope you can see where I'm going. Brute forcing it is only a good choice if you have no other choice, really. Art Cole, thank you for the follow so much. Oh, Tech Two, thank you. Thank you so much. I like to do these Q&As every so often, and I just was thinking, I was like, man, I haven't done one of these in a long time. We've been really focused on React and like forging ahead and getting new information, and I was like, man, I've from the stuff I've been hearing from the community and the coffee chats I've been having, I was like, oh dang, I need to do another Q&A. And Quad Chat brings up a great point. They say all of our discussion here, the things we've been talking about, these conversations, this is all the types of things that you talk about in coffee chats. This sort of organic back and forth, you know, having, hearing different opinions, hearing about people's backgrounds. This is the type of things that you're going to talk about in coffee chats. And so if you're having anxiety about, ooh, what's a coffee chat going to be like? It's going to be like this. An easy back and forth, going off on little tangents occasionally, bringing up new topics, bringing up differences of opinion, and talking about those in a polite way. That's what coffee chats are like. It's not a huge deal. Sirius says, so clearly we need to play more Minecraft to get good at code. Hey, I'm never going to advocate against playing Minecraft. I think there's a role. Minecraft has a place for all of us in our hearts. I think we can never not play Minecraft in our lives. And so I agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. Dion says, I got obsessed with solving Code Wars problems up until July when I started my recent laid off job. I have not touched one since then, and I feel like I can't solve an 8Q anymore. Yeah, there's kind of a balance that it's hard to achieve sometimes with Code Wars. You got to be careful about that, right? And I like what Leon recommends about, solving just one or two per day. Like just do one or two Code Wars a day, focus on a specific topic you're having trouble with, and leave it at that. It's really easy to go overboard and get wrapped up in like the gamified feeling of getting points for solving them, or wrapping up your identity in how many code wars you've solved. And I think that that's a slippery slope. I know that. Ask me how I know. I fell down that slippery slope pretty hard. However, it was still valuable to do them. I think just like with anything, do them in moderation. Quad says, I have anxiety and I'm neurodiverse, so I bring a list of stock questions to coffee chats to help me. But this is what we're doing. Yeah. And, we talked a little bit about the back and forth that happens in coffee chats. And in coffee chats, it's okay to have a list of questions to kind of fall back on if you need them, right? But what's important is that you listen to what the other person is saying and respond to what they've said. Acknowledge what they've said, maybe ask a follow up, and then if you need to go on to the next question on your list, then you can, right? They're not going to know. You can have a little notebook with some questions written down. It's all good. Sirius says, I'm actually looking at the education aspect of Minecraft to help teach certain concepts to my 6-year-old. Absolutely. I think that's a great way. Oh, Tech2, thank you for the Prime sub. I think my sub notifications might be working now. So, hooray. That's great. Thank you, Tech2. Prime subs are great because they don't cost you, the viewer, they don't cost you anything at all. They are free if you are an Amazon Prime subscriber. So, if you're going to sub to someone, it doesn't have to be me. It could be anybody, your favorite streamer, whoever you want. Don't spend your money if you are already an Amazon Prime subscriber and you haven't used your Prime sub, use that instead because that won't cost you any money. Kev says, what do you think about a full paid trainee program? Is that always a scam or something to keep in mind? Some companies here do in-house 12 months training while fully paying. If they're paying you to learn, hell yeah. At first I thought you were saying like you were paying them, and I was like, oh, that sucks. But no, they're paying you full salary to learn. I would, yeah, absolutely. That sounds awesome. Hey, Dan can code. How's it going? Ahmed says, "Do you have any tips, especially for that point in the cohort? I'm in class 38, and I feel like I have to do a ton of stuff in a day, from code wars to networking and homework, along with other things that I want to build. I feel like I'm burnt out. I still haven't found a good time management plan." Yeah, burnout is real and it's hard. Um, I would say if you're gonna, so, and not everybody has the same privilege of time, right? Some folks work full time. Some folks are caregivers to children or relatives or others. Some folks work two jobs. Some folks are working a job and being caregivers. I mean, everybody has a different amount of time allocated to them. I would say if you're going to focus on, if you got to pick stuff to focus on, um, I would focus on networking. So building your connections, sending out a couple messages per day, making some friends in the industry. And I would focus on, networking, and then also progressing in the class and doing the homework and learning the skills. If I had to pick a couple things to focus on, it would be those two. Yeah, internships should be paid. Absolutely. Hey, Fafin, how's it going? Yeah, Logic says you can always. So if you're in a coffee chat and you're really listening to the other person, you should be able to summarize or paraphrase what they've said in your own words and sort of repeat it back to them. So you don't have to be weird about it. You don't have to be like, what you said is that you came from a modest background and you are now a developer. That is what you said. You can be like, oh wow, I really appreciated hearing about how you grew up in a rural community and how you didn't know about coding, and now now you're a developer. Wow, that's so, I don't know, that was really cool to hear. Thank you for sharing that with me. And that's similar to my own background in that X, Y, and Z. And I that's such a neat connection, and that makes me feel like that's something that I could do myself. Um, so that's how you can kind of paraphrase and acknowledge what they've said, while also furthering the conversation. Dion says you can also get a free Twitch sub if you sign up for the $2.99 1 week Prime trial. Oh, I didn't know that. That's awesome. So yeah, um, get a free Twitch sub to give out to anybody that you want, by doing that. If that's something you want to do. Dan says, I've recently set a portion of hours aside to learn, instead of everything being a scramble to learn on project work. We'll see how it goes. Sure, give that a try. If it doesn't work, that's okay. Frankly says, I've never tried Minecraft. How does it help learning code? It doesn't necessarily help. There are educational versions of Minecraft out there. I just like Minecraft. I think it's fun. And so, that's, you can also do cool things in Minecraft creative mode by doing modifications. And if that's, if you like that kind of gamified, learning how to build things and learning how to code that way, that might be fun, but it's not necessarily a coding tool. Boot says, if we're doing an AMA, maybe you can explain Matty Two Shoes left join is the best join joke. Yeah, so I haven't heard Maddie say that joke specifically, so I don't know the context, but I can explain what a left join is. And so if we're talking about SQL, um, that is a reference to SQL, which is the database language that we talked about before. And relational databases are made up of tables. So think about tables as like gigantic Excel spreadsheets. They contain rows and columns of information, and it's usually information that is related to a very specific topic. So, for example, I might have let me think of something here. I might have in one table, I might have a list of, let's say we're talking about like a database of types of shoes. In one table, I might have information about the shoes, such as model name, size, and color. So like their physical characteristics. So physical characteristics of the shoes, and then in another table, I might have information about the customers, or like the customers purchasing those shoes, like how sales volume for those shoes might be in another table. And let's say I want to see which characteristics of those shoes have the most sales. And that information is being stored in two separate tables, right? If I want to know what color of shoe is selling the best, I'm going to need to join my sales table to my characteristics table. right? I need to link those two together. And so when we do that, we generally link on a common denominator of some kind, such as it could be anything, such as a model name or some kind of identifier. If you're familiar with MongoDB, you know that everything in MongoDB has a unique identifier. And that's generally what we do in SQL as well. Each of our tables is going to have a unique identifier that we can use to link to other tables. It's not always true, but it is true most of the time. Um, and so when we do that, it's called a join. And there's several different types of joins that we could do. Um, but left join is by far the most common join. And what you're doing in a left join is you are starting out with a base table. And that base table basically contains all the information that you want. You just want to add some additional details onto it. So in the case of the example that we're talking about, I would probably start with my sales table. My sales table has the volume, model names, and basically what I want to figure out is just, all right, which colors are selling the best? I already know my volume. I just want to add some details and say, all right, okay, now out of this sales volume, what color are each of these models that are selling the best? And so from that, I have my base table, which is my sales table. And I just want to, for each record in my sales table, I want to add the color onto it. And so I would do a left join with my base table being my sales table, and then joining only the color information to the end of that sales table. And so what a left join does is it keeps a base with all the rows from that base, and it adds details from the other table. And what could happen there is that maybe I have some sales volume for models that are discontinued. And so those models no longer exist in my detail table with the colors. So there could be some null values that aren't going to show up for the color information. And that's okay. A left join preserves those null values and keeps our base table intact. So probably why Maddie says left join is best join is because it preserves all the data in your base table, and it just adds additional detail from whatever other tables you're joining to it. That's a very high level. There's a lot I could talk about with joins. There's several different types of joins we can do, but I don't want to confuse folks that have never used a relational database before. But if you're curious, there's some great infographics out there that talk about joins in a visual way, which I think is the best way to learn what the different join types are and how they work. But yeah, by far left join is the most common join that you will find when you're working with SQL. It's kind of like the default join. Inner join is the second most common. Yeah, I can confirm Dan can code is pretty great. Fuel Snobble says you can do left joins in Excel too with X lookup. Yeah. Since I've been a dev, I haven't really had the chance to like mess with the new functions in Excel, and I kind of miss it. When I was an analyst, I used to work in Excel every day, all day, and so I'm missing out on the new features. I feel like I don't know. I feel deprived of all the cool Excel stuff that we can do now because I just don't have the chance to use it. I miss it. I love Excel. Excel is great. Excel is bay. Hey, Mr. Carson, thank you. Good luck with studying React. Check out my series on YouTube if you need some help with that. And Quadshot says, yeah, self care is a part of learning. Sleep, physical activity, and art can all help your brain have the space to make connections to solve problems. Absolutely. I highly agree with that. You need to give yourself grace, and you need to give your body and your brain time to process and recover the information that you're giving it. Logic says, mine, what was your approach for finding devs on Twitter to network with? Um, I'm kind of having a tough time finding devs that work at companies that are somewhat local. Yeah, so as far as Twitter, I would say just using the search function and also following topics that you're interested in or following topics that are related to the kind of devs you want to pursue. So You might follow local companies on Twitter, look at kind of the content that they're posting, the hashtags that they're using, look and see, like, look for devs that are interacting with their company's content. Um, and because those people are going to be active on Twitter, right? If they're interacting with their company's content, then they're going to be active on Twitter. They're probably going to respond to your messages. They might even have like their Calendly posted in their bio, stuff like that. You could also go to LinkedIn, look up those companies. Look up the company on LinkedIn, look up the people that work there, and see if they've got their socials linked in their LinkedIn, and then go back to Twitter and find them there. So you can branch out a little bit and kind of just try to insert yourself into those social circles that those devs are already in. Vaffin says, "Mine Wolf, this is by far the best my understanding of SQL joins has ever been." Oh, great! Yay! Pretty sure I don't get them still, but I get them a lot better. That's good. I'm glad. And like I say, infographics, so like visual representations, are a great way to learn SQL joins. Far better than trying to explain it in words. So I would look up a visual description of SQL joins, and that's a great way to get them in your brain. Logic says, "Why don't front end devs throw parties because they can't join tables?" Okay, that was pretty funny. Phil says some devs go for your throat if you say ORM to them. Yeah, you know, I'm biased because I started out as a SQL dev, so I've never really had much of a need for an ORM. But hey, just like with anything, they exist for a reason and they serve a particular purpose. So I can't really speak to them very much, but you know, I don't know. I feel like as devs, sometimes we get super weird and gatekeepy about certain skills or certain tools not being worthy, or but it's like the tool exists and people are using it for a reason. Then if it's helping us get work done, why is it bad? Um, I don't know. I feel like we sometimes shoot ourselves in the foot by dismissing certain tools or processes out of hand because that's not the way we do it. But why don't you try it out and see if it's maybe a better way to do things? Or maybe they have some ideas that you could apply in the way that you do things to make your processes better. So I feel like sometimes we dismiss too quickly just to feed our own sense of superiority. Chris says Excel is Bay printed onto a shirt could serve as another mind merch idea. I feel like we got a whole list at this point. Judson and Spartacus, thank you so much for the follows. I'm glad you're enjoying your time here. Mavi says, "I just tweet dumb garbage and I have almost 3,000 followers, most of them bibs." Yeah, part of it is just doing stuff in this space where you want to make friends or make connections. Sometimes it's just existing there and putting out content. It doesn't have to be like Mavi says. It doesn't have to be particularly like weighty content. It could be anything, but if you're interacting in that space, you're going to make connections. But Mavi, I will say your content is good. I love your content. You make good stuff. Follow Mavi on Twitter if you're not already. I think Yoda might have something to say about this path you're sending me down. Excel leads to access, and access leads to entity. I think you mean entropy. Yeah. I don't know. Excel is good at what it does. It really is. And it's only getting better. Excel is my favorite software. Stony says, "I didn't realize Twitch was good for dev stuff. Hello world." What? Yeah. There's a massive and really great software and game dev community here on Twitch. And the best part about it is, I mean, not everybody, but a lot of the folks are streamers with a smaller audience. And so you're going to get a personal interaction with those folks. There's so many cool people making cool content in the software and game dev space. Whatever you want to do or whatever you want to learn or see, it's out there and somebody's streaming about it. So it's a fantastic category. Oh, thank you for the follow, Stony. Fuel says access is so good for what it is intended for. Just like yes, just like with anything, if you try to take a tool and you try to force it to do something it wasn't built for, then yeah, you're gonna have a bad time. Dan King Code says, Mine Wolf, do SQL databases have a way of executing code based on a database event? I.e., when column A changes from false to true, call this code that sends a notification. Yeah, so there's a thing called triggers and stored procedures in SQL. And so essentially, when a thing happens, then a block of code can be triggered. And to execute when certain conditions are met. And so, yeah, the SQL does have the ability to do that. You can have certain triggers that fire, and they call a series of stored procedures, which can then call other procedures. There's also functions that can be called, where you can package up a bunch of code, just like in JavaScript. You can package up a bunch of code inside of a function, and then call that function when you need it to execute that block. So there's several different ways that you can do that sort of thing, depending on what you're trying to do. Thank you, Judd. Thank you for the follow. Yeah, triggers can be dangerous, but I mean, to answer your question, that's what you can do. But triggers can be dangerous, and I'm going to tell you a story about that. So when I was working, I mentioned I worked for an e-commerce company for a while, and I was on the production side in this e-commerce company. So essentially, it was a big old warehouse, and that was where we actually made the products that were being shipped out. And I was kind of an operations manager for this warehouse. And all of the operations, all of the like literally the orders and the packages moving through the warehouse would be moved and shunted to the right place based on stored procedures that were written in SQL. And those procedures would be triggered by, say, like a barcode scan. All right, the barcode has been scanned. This order is now going to flip its status and be in, created status or whatever. And all those things these triggers are all firing, stored procedures are running. It was a well-oiled SQL machine. And I was an operations manager, so I was basically in charge of making sure that orders weren't ending up in statuses they shouldn't be in, troubleshooting things that were hung up, troubleshooting things that kept failing QA, all those, basically just making sure that those orders get out the door. And we also had a bunch of dedicated developers that were working offsite, so they're working in another location, and they would build enhancements and new tools to help make the processes even better. The thing about this particular company is that they did not have, well, okay, I shouldn't say that. They did not have a robust dev environment. So they technically had a dev environment, but it was it was not really kept in line with the production environment so much. And so our developers would do what work they could do in dev, and then we would release things. In order to really see whether something was working, it would have to be released into production, and then see if it broke everything. So we would do scream tests where we would release a feature, and then if somebody screamed, figuratively, that something was broken, then we would roll it back. What could go wrong? Candy Pants says, yeah, absolutely. What could go wrong? And another thing about the dev environment is that it was not particularly well distinguished. So it was very easy to swap between the two environments. Now, you might be able to see where I'm going here. We had a developer, a very senior developer. It wasn't me. I was not a developer at this time. One of those people that was working offsite was building a new trigger. And this trigger would fire every time a certain condition was met. Automatically it would fire every time status X was reached in an order, and it would execute some more code. This developer was building out a trigger, and they built the trigger out about halfway, got it kind of working. It was throwing errors, but who cares? It's dev. So they were, they put the trigger in place. They were going to test it, and then they went to lunch. And then the production floor came back from their lunch and started production. All of a sudden, I noticed that everything was breaking. We had folks on the floor that were calling in on their walkie-talkies saying, "Hey, I can't scan orders. It won't let me. I'm getting an error in the shipping application. This order won't scan. The conveyor belt isn't putting things in the right place. What's going on?" And I'm like, "Whoa, hold on. What the frick?" And yeah, it turns out that trigger was firing just as it had been programmed to do. It was firing in production, and it was incomplete. And what it was doing was systematically corrupting all of the data in the production environment and it had been for like an hour before it got to the point where it was actually like disrupting things to the point where things were shutting down. Um, so and it and we couldn't figure out how to stop it, and we couldn't get a hold of the developer. The developer came back to lunch to an absolute from like this the poor developer. He came back from lunch to an absolute dumpster fire. Um, yeah, and so he was able to stop it because he knew what he had done. You know, like he was like, oh, because he like, and he had driven somewhere else for lunch, like, you know, which is fine. You can do that. You're allowed to do that. He had gone somewhere else for lunch, and then he got back, and it just all blew up. And so he was able to stop it. We figured out what had happened, but that didn't fix all of the stuff that broke, all of those physical orders that were out there on the production floor that were now irreparably corrupted. Um, and it got to the point where, you know, we're like, okay, we'll roll up to backups. We'll go to, we'll roll back. It's all right. We've got backups, right? Right? We've got backups. Yeah, no, the backups, you know, as is so often the case, the backups were not well maintained. And yeah, it was not a good situation. We had to call a consulting company and pay them just inordinate amounts of money to recover this data that had been corrupted, by this trigger that had been firing in production accidentally. I pretty much slept at the office that night in the production facility. I slept on the couch in my manager's office. I went home to like feed my dog and like, you know, let him out and do those types of pet care type things. And then I was right back at the office and like sleeping on the couch. And we were all working in shifts, testing things, trying to recover. Um, yeah, it was a bad time, but we did recover. Some data was lost. You couldn't avoid it. But the backup systems were repaired. The dev and prod environments were better delineated and separated from each other, so that what little dev environment we did have couldn't be mistaken for prod accidentally. The trigger was fixed. It was deployed successfully in prod, and that developer was not fired because, by golly, he learned his lesson, right? He learned his lesson. We mitigated the situation. And eventually he became the leader of the dev team and made sure that no other developer would ever make that same mistake ever again. So it was an expensive lesson, but it was learned, right? And so to wrap that around to the original topic, triggers can be extremely useful, but the thing to remember about them is that they will fire whenever a certain condition is met, regardless of the other circumstances. And so you need to be very careful in the way, when and where and how you apply triggers in databases. So I love that story. It's fun. But you know what they call, so this particular developer, his nickname after that for the rest of the time that I worked there from everybody was the butterfly, because you know the butterfly effect, one little change can just have ripples that go out and destroy everything. And yeah, he was the butterfly. People would post in chat like butterfly emojis, you know, whenever this guy joined a meeting. Yeah, it was great. He took it in stride. He was a fun guy. We're still friends. Ryan K. Hawkins says triggers are kind of like an event listener. Yeah, I mean they wait for a certain condition to happen and they fire when that condition is met. Yeah. Yeah, and Faf and I would agree that Power BI has done a lot to kind of, Microsoft has kind of tried to replace the functionality in Access with some of the more robust tools that now exist in Microsoft, in Excel and Power BI, like joining those things together. Microsoft Excel has actually quite a lot of powerful data analytics tools, especially if you're using something like Power Pivot or was it Power Pivot, and what's the other one? Ah, Power. There's another Power extension that's built into directly into Excel. So yeah, between Power BI and Power Pivot, you can do a lot of the things that you could do in Access. Oh, thank you for the hydrate. Hmm. Sorry, I'm catching up with chat here. Ratsky says, "Do you have LinkedIn? I tried searching for you, but didn't find you." Yeah, so there's a link to my LinkedIn. If you find me on SQL, sorry, on Twitter, I'm at Mayan Wolf on Twitter. I have a link to my LinkedIn there. You'll find it. It's right in my Twitter bio. So at Mayan Wolf on Twitter, and I have a link there. Dev to production nightmares. Yeah, I love the dumpster fire emoji. Stony Rob says, "Does 100 Devs support UK devs?" Absolutely, yeah. No matter where you are in the world, we've got folks in 100 Devs from every country. We've got folks from India, Africa, um, you know, all over, like legitimately all over the world. It's really cool, especially in some of the coffee chats that I've had. Um, I just spoke with someone from Brazil. Was it 2 days ago? Yeah, I spoke with someone from Brazil. I've spoken with folks from Turkey, Australia, Japan, I don't know. I think it's really I love connecting with folks on the 100 Devs Discord, and then we get into a coffee chat, and just learning about, okay, where are you from? What's your experience like? What's your background like? What's the culture around technology like in your area? And so yeah, I've had coffee chats with folks from literally all over the world in 100 Devs. Now I will say that the overall like advice given is more tailored to folks in the US. However, Leon is also very open to answering questions from folks in other countries about their specific experience and their culture and what to do, for folks outside of the US. Baffin says, if you have a backup but haven't tested a restore yet, you have no backups. Exactly. Yep. Rule of thumb. No worries, Kiro. Good to see you. Good to have you here. Absolutely. That's why breaking stuff pays. Yeah, and the best. So right, accidents and errors and bugs and production disasters are going to happen. It's inevitable. The best thing that you can do is handle that failure gracefully and do lessons learned. Get your lessons learned from that failure, and then apply those to make sure that the failure is never going to happen again, or at least very less likely to happen again. One thing that I really like about my current employer is that we do, it's basically a post mortem, but we call it like a, what do we call it? Like an incident analysis or whatever, where after a major production failure or error happens, the relevant people all get into a meeting together, and we just talk about what happened in a non-judgmental, no blame type of a way. Just say, like, look, here's the facts of what happened. Here's what we did to resolve it. Here's what I think we should do to mitigate this in the future. And now who, like, okay, now and you're going to do X, Y, and Z and get this in place by a certain deadline. And so, it really just makes sure that the incident isn't swept under the rug or forgotten, but making sure that nobody feels singled out or blamed. Um, because if one person is able to cause a major failure, then that's a problem with the system, right? The system should not allow one single person to trigger a massive event of some kind. And so there's no use blaming that person. The system should be upgraded, the person should be educated if applicable, and that's the best way to mitigate that. Some great discussion here. I haven't really been reading all of it, but some great discussion regarding uh, Scala and, yeah, big data. Yeah, I love it. Thank you all for having that discussion and sharing that information. Yeah, and that's a great point that Frankly is making. There are what I like to call different flavors of SQL. So SQL itself is not really a language. SQL is, as Frankly mentioned, SQL is a format. SQL, structured query language, is a set of rules to which other languages can adhere. Right, right. So a language can be built to adhere to those rules and then call itself a flavor of SQL. And so there's several different flavors out there. Um, Microsoft has its own flavor. It's called T-SQL. Um, Oracle has its own flavor called PL/SQL. There's an open source flavor, which you've probably heard of, called Postgres or PostgreSQL. Uh, there's all different flavors. There's MySQL as well, and all of those adhere to the SQL rules and standards. And it was defined, yeah, and as Fuel points out, I think was it 1978 or 1977. The rules were laid down for SQL in the 70s, in the late 70s, and since then, all of these flavors, all these proprietary flavors, that most of which are owned by big companies, they have all branched out from that set of rules. That doesn't mean that they're very different from each other, though, because they all adhere to the rules of SQL. And so, for example, I started out in my career using T-SQL, so Microsoft's flavor of SQL, right? Which has its own little quirks and behaviors and things you can do. Um, and then I moved to PL/SQL, which is Oracle SQL. And I was able to do that fairly easily without too much trouble. So the analogy that I like to use is that SQL is like saying, I speak English, right? So, like, I know SQL is like saying, I speak English. Now, that could mean if I was just like writing that down and I showed that to you on a piece of paper, I speak English without me saying anything, you wouldn't be able to tell, does she speak with an American accent? Does she speak, the British or the British dialect of English? Does she speak Australian English? All those different flavors of English, right? And they have different vocabulary words. They have different ways they structure sentences. Um, they have different ways of spelling things, saying things, structuring the flow of the language. And so it's a very similar thing to it's like there's different dialects of SQL out there, but you can translate between them without too much trouble. If I speak American English, for the most part, I can understand somebody from Australia. I might not know a few words here and there, but I can generally get the gist from context, and that's what it's like learning SQL. Once you know one flavor or dialect of SQL, you can generally pick up the others without too much trouble. Yeah. So don't so if you know, let's say you learn Postgres, right? You learn Postgres from doing free online courses. If a job calls for, you know, T-SQL or PL/SQL, don't get discouraged. You can say, yeah, I know SQL, and you can pick up whatever you need from PL/SQL or T-SQL without too much trouble at all. Thank you for the follow, Ozareno and Mark Bones and Arduku. Thank you. So yeah, once you know one, the door opens to all the other versions. Baffin says pivot tables were a game changer when I first used. Oh yeah, I love pivot tables. They're fantastic. They're great. Knowing what a pivot table was got me my second job. Uh, that job at that e-commerce company. Yeah, the manager asked me, he asked me, tell me what a pivot table is. Can you tell me what a pivot table is? And I was able to explain it. I, described what it is, what it does, how it works. And I didn't really think much of the question at the time, but he told me later, he was like, that is why I hired you, because you could tell me exactly what a pivot table was and how it worked. Because they're fantastic. Yeah. That's why I like Excel, man. Close to my heart. Yeah, had to digest 5 years of hardware invoices from 4 different school boards to figure out what the trend toward wireless uptick was for consulting gig. Probably turned a 3-day job into a 3-hour job. Yeah, 100%. Michael PC Gamer says anything? Question mark. I assume you're referring to ask me anything. Yeah, as long as it's appropriate to ask in a public forum. Yeah, then ask me if you have a question. Ask it. Dan says it's quite a bit of extra effort to bulletproof a system from all individuals. Someone has the credentials to deploy to production, and somebody probably needs to be able to deploy and fix things when that person is on vacation or out sick. Yes, absolutely. You're always going to have individuals with high levels of access, but what's important is that those individuals are properly trained and that there's a clear chain of command as to when that person is allowed to touch things in production. There needs to be sign off, there needs to be proper reporting, and if something were to go wrong, then that person's manager should be the one, saying, all right, how could we manage this better? What does this person need from me, the manager, to make sure that this goes better next time? More training, more refinement of the access credentials that are given, like restricting access from certain databases, um, sign off by another group before deployment is made, stuff like that, right? There's always something more you can do. It's never going to be a perfect system, but you can always strive to be better. Michael PC says, I just want GPT to see all my files and make the rest of my project for me. I'm sure it'll come. I'm sure it will. Fuel Snobble says, select, insert, update, and delete is fairly portable in SQL. Yeah, absolutely. If you think about it, those keywords, select, insert, update, delete, that's CRUD. That's a basic, those are the tent poles of CRUD operations. And so if you know CRUD in SQL, you can use it in any flavor. Those keywords are usable across the board. Dan Can Code says, Meinwolf, what was your explanation of a pivot table? Yeah, so pivot tables are great. A regular table contains rows and columns, right? Um, the thing about pivot tables is that it adds additional functionality in several ways to your basic table. So with a pivot table, you can dynamically change what is a row, what is a column, and what is a value. You define those things yourself. You can drag and drop fields from a traditional table into the rows, the columns, and the values. And as you do this, it shows up visually on the screen. And so you can see how your table is being built on the fly as you drag things into the row, column, and value buckets. And then once you have the layout looking the way that you want, you can perform all sorts of operations on it. You can change the way that the values are displayed. You can, change their formatting. You can add subtotals. You can add grand totals. You can even add layers of row values and layers of column values. So, for example, when I worked in finance, a lot of what we would have is we would have, I'll call it like account groups. So we would have group one, group two, group three, and inside of those groups, we would have a bunch of individual accounts. And so in my pivot table, what I could do is drag in the group name first into the row box. And then secondly, I would drag in the accounts. And how that would show up is the groups would be a large bucket, and then inside of those groups, each of the individual accounts belonging to that group would be listed. And then in the values, I could put, I don't know, whatever, however much money is in that particular account, that would be listed on individual rows. And then at the bottom of the group, I could have a subtotal showing the total of all the account values within that group. And so that's just a small example of how you can layer those row and column values to give you more insight into what's going on with your data. And another thing that you can even do is add what we call calculated fields, which are fields that are dynamically calculated based on a formula that you specify, and that update themselves based on how the data is arranged inside the pivot table. And so if you need even more, structured calculations that are outside of what pivot tables can do by default, you can define your own fields and drag them around and do whatever the heck you want with them. And so pivot tables give you extremely high value analytics extremely quickly. And they're especially great if you don't know what you want right away. If you're still trying to feel out the data and feel what's in there, figure out, look for trends, look for certain behaviors. You can drag fields in and out. You can start at a high level and then drill down by dragging more layers of fields in, and adding totals at various levels. And then finally, you get the layout that you want, and it's showing the data that you expect. And giving you the result you need. And then you can click a button and add a chart that feeds off of that pivot table immediately and displays the information as it's shown in the pivot table. And then as you apply filters to that pivot table, your chart will update automatically and show the results that you expect in a visual form. So that's why pivot tables are great. I can talk. I get excited about Excel. My analyst background is showing. I love Excel. It's so great. People just don't understand it, and so they don't use it. But it can make your work so much faster if you can do it, if you can use it well. So what I find myself doing is sometimes is I will, if I'm trying to get insights from data in a database, I will write a SQL query to narrow down, a really big data table and narrow it down into a smaller chunk of data that I want to analyze. And then I would literally just rip that data out of the SQL results, dump it into an Excel spreadsheet, and build a pivot table on it and just tear it apart and figure out what's going on, figure out if there's values missing, figure out if things aren't displaying the way I expect, figure out what my totals look like, if values are being repeated, all those sorts of things. It's so much faster to analyze it in a pivot table than it would be to try to come up with just the right SQL query to figure out what's going on. Yeah, Fafin, yeah. So T-SQL is Microsoft SQL, absolutely. Arwen says, what is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? I would ask ChatGPT that question. Fuel says, I don't want any access to a production database. Yeah, that's the right answer. But we use a system where I can request temporary access if I need to do something. This is logged in an audit log. That's the right way to do it. Dan says, can you drag and drop with the hand gestures you use, like in Minority Report, VR pivot tables? That would be awesome. I would love that. Pivot. Fuel says, the good thing about SQL is that it is a complex domain, so you have a lifetime of learning ahead of you. 100%. SQL is easy to learn, and absolutely easy to learn, but hard to master. Yeah, it is incredibly deep as far as where you can go with it. But learning the basics, you can do that in a few hours. So I recommend it to everyone. Learning the basics of how to do so, just the R in CRUD, just the read operations. Because a lot of times you're not going to have write access to a database. You're not going to be able. They don't want you in there messing with stuff. But what they're going to give you, what they're going to let you do, is write read-only queries where you can only read data but not write anything back. And so that's a really easy subset of SQL to learn, to query what you want. Tech2 says, instead of a pivot table, couldn't we just do a really complicated query using aliases and joins? I have some coworkers who do that. Some coworkers will write those crazy complex triple joins with filters, and I don't know. I don't bother with that. Usually, I will write a rough and ready query that breaks a table that's like 6 million rows down to a few thousand rows. And then I'll take that and dump it into Excel and do the hard work there, or do the detail work there. Presley says, Mindwolf, I follow your code along videos on YouTube quite religiously and do everything exactly how you do them to avoid errors in my code, but it never works. I always end up with an error in the code or an app crashed. I've also looked at your GitHub code and everything is exact, but I still get errors. Does that mean as new updates come in MongoDB and such, the GitHub code becomes slightly obsolete? Yes. Unfortunately, the progress is never static in the tech industry. There will always be updates. There will always be changes in libraries, changes in features. So if you're looking at one of my videos from a year ago, unfortunately, there could be things in there that are no longer valid as to the current state of the package. So this is where troubleshooting, active troubleshooting, can come in handy. If you're getting an error, if you're getting an app crashed error, then read that error. Look for specifically, what is that error telling you? Is it telling you that the error is on a specific line? Is it telling you that the error is with a specific package? Is it telling you that there's a communication problem with the server? What is the meat of that error? And then I would Google that specific error, and somebody will probably say, there'll be some response on Stack Overflow saying, oh yeah, there was an update in fall of 2022 that made this particular thing obsolete. You need to do this instead, and you generally will tell you what you need to do to fix that issue. And you could also ask ChatGPT too. You could feed that error text into ChatGPT and say, hey, ChatGPT, I'm getting this error, what does it mean? And it will maybe guide you in the right direction, and then you can put that into Google, and and see what response you get. So unfortunately, with code that's more than a couple months old, you're probably going to encounter bumps along the way. However, that is true to the real experience that a developer will have on the job. You're always going to be encountering code in your code base that's going to throw errors. Errors are an inevitable part of life. Things are generally never going to work on the first try. And so the best thing you can do for yourself is teach yourself how to troubleshoot, learn how to troubleshoot actively, and learn how to Google effectively. Learn how to put things in Google to find relevant results, things that'll fix your problem. And you can, go onto forums, go onto the Discord, ask those questions. Has anybody else encountered this error? Ask that type of question, and then somebody might be able to point you in the right direction. But thank you, Presley. I'm glad you're following the videos. And like I say, the best thing you can do for yourself is learn how to troubleshoot effectively, because that will serve you well once you get a job as a developer. Excel is the only successful low code tool. Absolutely. I highly agree with you. Chat says, will you continue to learn Vim today? Not today. Today we're doing an Ask Me Anything. But I do want to get those keybinds going in those Vim keybinds going in VS Codes, because some of those are really useful. Frankly says, would you say a pivot table helps you as a human to quickly spot patterns in the data, like missing values or duplicates? Absolutely. Because pivot tables can be organized in whatever way makes sense to you. It might not make sense to anybody else, but that doesn't matter. It's a pivot table. It can be rearranged at any time. You can add filters, you can add colors, you can add dynamic highlighting, you can add display types. You can, it's basically allows you to structure the data in a way that makes visual sense to you and will help you spot those patterns. Tech2 says, can I mention blue green DB deployments again? Surely that's the real way to deploy today. I can't speak to that. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with blue green terminology. If you want to explain what that is, I'm happy to hear it. Oh, Tech. Okay, I saw you explained it down a little below. I see Tech2. Most cloud services now offer something similar, where you basically have a staging environment for the DB before pushing to production. Yes, that's what I currently do. We don't call it blue green. I'm not familiar with that terminology, but we actually have several layers of test environments prior to production, and the work needs to be signed off um, at every level before it reaches production. We have what we call a sandbox environment for that's for more of like systems testing. So it's not that's not where I do my work, my development work. So that's like systems testing level, and then above that we have what we call our dev environment, and that's where I do my work. Like that's where I'm actually writing code, copying and pasting things in, like doing all the like testing stuff, getting errors, troubleshooting those errors, um, occasionally banging my head against the wall, praying for something to start working because I don't understand why. Trying things that don't work, rolling them back. Um, that's our dev environment. That's where the nitty gritty, the nasty hard work happens. And then after we think we're done, we deploy that up one level to our QA environment. And QA is exactly what it sounds like. QA is the quality assurance level, and that's not production, but it is a environment that mirrors how production looks. So that's where our customers or our users can go in and validate and make sure that my work is doing what they want it to do. Like, oh yeah, that's behaving the way I expected, or oh yeah, that data looks right. That I think that's what I'm supposed to see. And then they have to sign off on that. So at the dev level, I signed off on my own work. At the QA level, the customer signs off on my work. And then finally, after two sign offs have happened, then that information goes to production. Now, does this mean that you never get any errors in production? Absolutely not. Because there's things that happen in production that simply can't happen in QA. And so you get things, there's always going to be more stuff that comes to light at the production level. However, does it mitigate errors and mitigate problems and mitigate disagreements between the developers and the customers? Absolutely, because we have that sign off. And so maybe the customer doesn't test appropriately, right? They might just sign off on something and be like, yeah, it's fine, whatever, and they didn't even look at it, and then it errors out in production. Well, then that, okay, customer needs to look at it better next time, because this is something they should have caught in QA. And so there's that paper trail, that path of accountability that happens, that helps to reduce the amount of anomalies and issues that we have in production. And so we do have those multiple layered environments, and it's a really great system to have. It reduces errors, it reduces downtime, it creates accountability. Michael PC Gamer says, my first full stack attempt was completely guided by GPT. There's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely. Yeah. On stream here, on this stream, a couple of times, we have built apps that were entirely based on chat GPT prompts. We just put something in chat GPT and had it write us the code for us. It was more of an experiment just for fun. I'm actually planning on doing that again. I'm thinking maybe next week we're going to use GPT-4 to do something. I don't know. I'm still spitballing. I'm still thinking about it, but I think that would be fun, because the last time we did it, we used 3.5, which is the older version of GPT. And so I'm curious to see the performance improvement from GPT-4 if we try to do something full stack. I don't know. I think it'd be fun. If you guys think that would be fun, let me know. If you guys are like, no, I don't want to do that, then let me know that as well. If you guys don't think it's interesting enough to do on stream, then I'll just do it on my own time. I don't care. I love using ChatGPT for error explanations, such a W. Yeah, GPT is fantastic for if you give it a specific, like, if you give it a specific command to be like, explain this error or tell me what's wrong with this, and you give it a specific thing to look at, it's very good at that. Presley says, yeah, I Googled an error once, and it basically boiled down to me having to downgrade my Mongoose version to an older version to make the code run. Yeah. And so that's probably because there were other things in your code that were only compatible with older versions of Mongoose. Now, to mitigate that for the future, you could upgrade everything to newer versions, but that may not be worth it in all cases. Sina says, learning Vim? Yeah, we did that last week. We went through the Vim tutor and learned some really useful keyboard commands for doing things really quickly in Vim and in VS Code. Oh, sorry, that was my dog. Hey, Madeline, good to see you. Madeline says, QA seems stressful. It really isn't. I like the QA environment because if they catch something in QA, that means it doesn't cause a disaster in production, right? If I make a stupid mistake, which I have absolutely done, and everybody does, you do something like you think it's working right, and then you completely miss the mark. I prefer that they catch it in QA and that it doesn't go and blow up production. So I love QA. I think it's fantastic. Oh, okay. So blue green deployment is if you push to production and things go wrong, you can still revert to previous working version. Yeah, I mean, we do that. We basically just, if something really breaks, um, we can quickly push the QA version up to basically revert, because so the way that we work is we always, keep QA and production as, like QA is what it used to be. And then, and then production gets put, well, I guess, so we have the ability to revert back if we really need to. Um, but generally what we'll do is just an emergency fix. We'll generally go in reverse. We'll fix the problem in production, and then we'll roll it down to the previous environments. But it just depends on the issue. But having multiple environments means that you can, recover from errors, however they look. We can make a random kitty name generator. Michael PC Gamer says Bing Chat is GPT-4 and now it allows 30 message convos. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. I've really only tried code generation with like the actual like GPT interface because I'm a sucker who pays for GPT-4. Um, $20 a month, baby. But I do like showing, if I can show it on stream, that means you guys don't have to pay for it and you can still see what it can do. Um, Faffin says you love having QA, but do you love doing QA? Okay, fair piece. Yeah, QA is not the funnest thing in the world. So Madeline, in our case anyway, the people who are testing in QA are the end users who are going to be using it in prod. So if they miss something in QA, all they're there's all the only person they can blame is themselves. They were supposed to test it, they didn't. It goes to prod, it doesn't work right. There's they can only blame themselves if anything. Brian McLeod, thank you for the follow. Hot fix right on production. I mean, Dan, I was talking about it at that e-commerce company. That's how we did things. It was always a screen test, and then you just deploy and you hope and wait for the shift workers to come back from lunch and see if they can do stuff. And or sometimes it would be me literally running around the production floor, going to all the different stations and testing things out, and carrying a walkie-talkie and yelling to the devs if guys, I can't scan. Why won't it's showing me an error on this field and it says, blah, blah, blah. We've got 15 minutes to fix it before the team comes back from lunch. Let's go. Can you maybe guess why I burnt out after 3 years at that job? Maybe just a little bit. I did get a lot of exercise though. Crytek says, Mindwolf, hey, which ORM would you prefer? Type ORM versus Prisma. And in TS versus Postgres, I actually don't use ORMs, so I can't tell you, but I'm sure some folks in chats probably have opinions on that. No worries, Quad Shot. Thank you for being here. Michael PC says $20 a month. Is it really worth it? I considered it, but it's like it has to be really worth it. Yeah, absolutely. It's not going to be worth it for everybody. I find it helpful, like I said before, with like troubleshooting at my day job, jumping in SQL queries and having it tell me the error. Or also, another thing I use it for is if I have a mental picture of the type of query that I want to build, um, especially for very complex queries. If I can say like, okay, I want these fields from like these 6 tables, and I want to join them all together, and I want to inner join this one and outer join this one, and left join this one and right join this one, and have these filters on these fields, and I don't know the most efficient way to do that or the best way to do it. I just tell ChatGPT what I want to do, like in the types of joins I want to do, and the fields I want, and the filters I want, and then I have it build the query for me, because I'm not likely to get it right on the first try if I try to build it myself, even though I know what I want to do, just because it's so complex. And so I know that ChatGPT is going to give me something that works first try. So if I already know what I want, I might as well have GPT build it. However, paying $20 a month is not going to be worth it for everybody. And the free version of GPT 3.5 is going to be perfectly fine for most people's needs. You do not need to pay $20 a month, um, unless you want to. And I want to, but not everybody does. And as you could see from my past streams where we built out full stack apps, we used ChatGPT 3.5 and we were able to do it without too much trouble. And so it can do a lot of things very well. No worries, Logic. Thank you for being here. Michael PC says, I come from a background of finding my textbooks for free. Oh, yeah, preach. Like I need $20 a month to be far better than Bing Chat. Yeah, I would say that GPT-4 is better at context. It's better at working with vague details or unclear details. But you can get the same result from 3.5 if you are very clear and specific and if you guide it to the answer. So, yeah, you don't have to pay 20 bucks. Dan says, Mind Wolf, out of curiosity, how long do you think it takes for a commit for a feature to get from development to being released on production? Every team is different. Every team is going to have different needs. Every team is going to have different testing timelines, right? For our team, we have a set schedule, and it's what we call sprints. So if you're familiar with Agile, that word will mean something to you, but basically it means chunks of development time where we work on specific tasks. Um, and at the end of that timeline, the task moves to a new environment. So for ours, I think an entire sprint process from dev to prod is going to be 3 weeks to a month. An item starts out as a ticket. I pick it up. I do the work in dev. That's like 2 weeks. It goes to QA. There's another week for testing, and then potentially some interim fixes there if something's not working, and then the rest of that time is then bug fixes and then deployment to prod. So yeah, I would say 3 weeks to a month. Without looking at the schedule in front of me, I can't say for sure, but that seems right. Uh, Presley says, one last question: Can full stack devs call themselves MERN devs? Um, what's involved in MERN is essentially incorporated in a full stack dev. Yeah, I mean, you can call yourself that. That's fine. If you know the things in MERN, then yeah, call yourself a MERN dev. I will say that not everybody's going to know what MERN means. I think full stack is maybe more of a vocab word that like recruiters are going to know. They might be like, what the frick is MERN? I've never heard of the MERN language. Whereas full stack is going to be a word that most folks are going to understand. Tech2 says, working in e-commerce, everything is a bomb. Yeah, it really is. It's all just on the razor's edge of imploding at any moment. Dr. Moda says, been thinking about getting work to shell out for GPT Plus, the $20 a month. Yeah, honestly, I've been trying to get my work to do that too, because I mean, 50% of what I use it for is actual job related tasks, and my coworkers are using it as well for answering those types of questions that we already talked about, error checking, helping with documentation, getting answers to weird niche questions, and so yeah, it's definitely been applicable to work. Yeah, I am hoping we can maybe come to some kind of a subscription. Hey, Antonio, good to see you. Crytek says, "Isn't GPT-4 slower?" I mean, technically, yeah, but it gives markedly better answers. Um, and the answers that it gives are higher quality in context, in the information that it provides. Well, the information that it provides is the same, but it gives you a better answer with more, like if you give it vague details, it will hone in on the answer more quickly. Again, that doesn't mean you can't get there with 3.5. It might just take a few more prompts. So I think it's worth the slower answer generation. Yeah. Tech2 says, in Scrum, a sprint most are usually 1 week to 2 weeks. Well, for devs, yeah, our sprints are 2 weeks ish. Chad says, do you find GPT-4 model answers are much better than GPT-3? I wouldn't say much better. I would say better, though. A single prompt in GPT-4 is going to get you more than a single prompt in GPT 3.5. However, GPT 3.5 with a couple of follow-ups to refine the answer, that'll get you to the same answer as well. Third Decade says, Mine, what do you think about GPT-4 web browser plugins and development if you use them? I don't currently use them. I use GPT-4 in the browser in the traditional way. I think they're cool. I think that's friggin' awesome. I can't wait to try them out. I haven't yet, but I want to. I want to build out automated tasks and have some fun automating stuff. And maybe cause the robot apocalypse, deploy Skynet. Things you do on the weekend. You know, as you know, as the great historical epic Terminator 2 has told us, our fate is what we make. And so, maybe fate is Skynet, and we just got, we're just going to get there. You never know. If I could end up buff like Linda Hamilton, maybe that would be worth it. And Data says, "Do you think AI will replace streamers?" There was that Seinfeld AI generated stream that was going for a while. It was pretty popular before it got banned. But I tuned into it for a little while. It was not great, but it was a thing. It was an attempt. It was a try. Yeah, Crytek says GPT Plus is pretty pricey. Yes, it is. That's why I say it's look, it depends on what you want to do with your money, right? And it probably isn't going to be GPT Plus. Dan says we don't have a QA team, so we've leaned more toward automated testing and CI/CD systems. Yeah, that's another way to go. Um, the only real manual process is some form of acceptance from the client before it's deployed. I mean, that's kind of what we do, right? We don't have a dedicated QA team. The person that signs off in QA is the customer. Um, yeah. So maybe that is CI/CD. I don't know. Mavi says ChatGPT 4 doesn't try to date you anymore. Might be a deal breaker. Yeah, I think there's specific apps you can get that will scratch that specific itch if that's something you're going for. Data says, "What is Mayan Wolf? Mayan Wolf is a name that I came up with when I was 12. Can you tell?" Crytek says, "Mayan Wolf, do you think I should add tests to my project before applying? Is it a deal breaker nowadays if somebody has no test?" It depends on the project. If it's going to be customer facing, um, and affect customers if something goes wrong, then you should probably have some kind of tests. If it's going to be for personal use and it doesn't really matter, then do whatever. But I would say that if you're going to be deploying for customers to judge your app and use it, then you're going to want to have some kind of testing. Hey, Owen, good to see you. Easy says, "Oh, okay, thank you, Easy." Easy says, "Every time I've gotten an interview, they've said, 'Oh, this is impressive that you add tests.'" There you go. That's from somebody who has been through the interview process. Um, Thank you for sharing that, Easy. Data says there is a paper today on Y Combinator that says they're using LLMs or these language models such as ChatGPT and similar to write SQL. I think it's called Palm SQL. Maybe worth checking out. Yes, I have actually heard of Palm SQL, and I think SQL is actually a fantastic language that is highly suited to LLMs. Because if you've never seen SQL before, the way it's written, and this is deliberate. It was written to be similar to an English sentence. If you see a SQL statement, it's going to have a similar subject verb structure to an English sentence, which is highly suited to the way LLMs work. Right? They work to write in a sentence structure that makes sense and has certain rules. And so SQL is highly suited to that. And so I'm not surprised. I expect SQL to get a certain degree of automation in the near future. And I'm prepared for that. I understand that. My job involves so much more than just writing SQL statements that I'm excited to have that sort of low level part of my job be automated and then be able to focus more on data flow, data pipelines, efficiency, that kind of thing. EC, you got rejected after the third round? Oh, no, that's terrible. Michael BC says, "Wait, the AI Seinfeld stream got banned." Yeah, they did. Because this is the thing about these language models. The reason that happened is because there was a failure in the advanced language model that they were using. And so, in order to not stop the stream, they rolled back to an older, less advanced language model. And unfortunately, that older language model didn't have certain safeguards on certain types of content. And I'm not going to say what that was. You can Google it if you want to. Certain types of content that was not acceptable on Twitch. And very rightly so. Then that content was then spoken on the stream, and so then the that AI generated stream was banned. Um, and that was because they rolled back to that older language model without the appropriate safeguards. And so that's why it's a lesson for all of us. We need to think about safeguards and appropriate guidelines and boundaries for these types of models as they mature. And the newer models, the one they've been using before, had the appropriate safeguards. The older model did not. Bobby says, I don't add tests. I like a surprise every now and then. Yeah, what's a production failure among friends? Danny says, "What's the purpose of the stream? My stream or the Seinfeld stream?" Frankly says, "So do you test SQL with SQL?" We fight fire with fire. Yeah. Um, what methods do you use to test complex SQL? Yeah. So a variety of things. It depends on the deployment. So sometimes it's just the customer knowing what the output is supposed to look like and whether it matches that expectation. Um, sometimes it's a major part of a project we're doing right now is we are converting a bunch of data that was stored in one data warehouse and removing all of it, all I don't know, it's hundreds of millions of rows worth of data, removing it to a brand new warehouse. And so they can compare the output from the old warehouse and the old functions and structures that were being used and compare that directly to what's coming out of the new warehouse and say, oh yeah, this matches, this lines up, or this has the new features that I requested, or nope, this is something's off here. And so sometimes it's just customer feedback. I do a lot of my own testing, obviously. Sometimes I will test it with SQL, right? I'll get some output out of an ETL pipeline that I've designed. I'll get the output written to a final table, and then I'll run a query on it to say, all right, do I have any blank columns? Do I have any blank rows? Are my totals adding up the way I expect? What is the count of certain output types? It just requires a certain familiarity with the data. So sometimes I will do a front line of testing with SQL statements and Excel, and then the customer will do their own testing by comparing against previous outputs, comparing against their own calculations, that kind of thing. There's all sorts of ways to do testing. The purpose of the stream, yes. So I'm currently a senior developer, and I like teaching people to also be developers and not have to pay any money to do that. I'm a part of 100 Devs, which is a larger group that's doing that same thing. So taking people from knowing nothing about coding all the way up to becoming web developers and getting jobs without paying any money. That's the important part. Um, Education should be free. You should not have to shell out big bucks and pay $10,000 for a boot camp to become a developer. If that is something that you're passionate about, you should be able to do it without expending anything other than your time. Because time is valuable, right? Time is just as valuable a currency as money. And so if you're already spending time learning this stuff, you should not have to pay money. And so I am not the leader of 100 devs. I am just someone who is also helping out in that community. And there's a lot of folks like me that are doing that. So if you're curious about 100 devs and learning how to code without paying any money, because again, education should be free, you can type !Leon, !Leon, in chat to learn more about it yourself. I'm not going to try to sell you anything or push anything on you. It's all up to you whether or not that's a community you want to join and a avenue you want to pursue for yourself. But don't pay $10,000 on a boot camp without first checking out a free community such as 100 Devs. But yeah, a lot of what I do on my stream is building projects, learning React, learning TypeScript, talking about coding concepts in an accessible way. Today we're doing an AMA, we're doing an Ask Me Anything session, but this is not what I normally do on stream. Normally we are building something, we are coding, we are learning together live. Where I'm answering questions about coding, and we are building something that you can use, and it's gathering skills that you can apply. So that's the purpose of this stream: improving myself while at the same time helping others improve. Filet says, I was able to pass the screening for a job, but they went with their in house intern before I could even get an in person interview. Yeah, that'll happen. Sometimes they'll post an external posting just because they have to, by company policy, but then they really just want to hire the intern. It happens. It's not a reflection on you at all. It's sometimes just how the cookie crumbles. Issy says, "Oh, you have another final round on Friday. That's so exciting. That's awesome. You're cooking, Issy." Tech2 says it will not take long before all governments start imposing strict rules on how we use AIs. Yeah, how effective those rules will be, I don't know. I have doubts. Still not stopped governments before, yeah. But all you have is a hammer, everything's a nail. Dan says, refuse to pay for education to get a job that earns you upwards of 60K a year, also pays $20 a month for ChatGPT. Hey, that's my personal preference. I am never going to tell you to pay $20 a month for GPT. What I am going to do is show it to you on stream so you don't have to, so you can still see how it works without having to pay. I'm telling you, use the free version of GPT. Don't pay $20 a month. And I mean that. Unless you want to, then do it. I'm not going to stop you. I don't care what you do in your free time. Uzi says, did you do cohort one? Uh, Uzi is referring to cohort one of 100 devs. Cohort two wrapped up so cohort one was early on, and cohort two of 100 devs wrapped up in November of 2022. So over 6 months ago now. I did not do cohort one. Um, I was already a dev by the time cohort two started, but I still did cohort two from start to finish because at the time I started cohort two, I only knew SQL. And as far as I was aware, web pages were literal magic and created by wizards. So I didn't know anything about web pages or HTML or CSS or JavaScript or anything like that. All I knew was SQL. So I found cohort two to be really valuable, and it taught me a lot of skills, uh, as you can see. I mean, yeah. I did have experience with SQL prior to cohort two. SQL is very different than something like JavaScript, but there are still concepts that do carry over. Certain terms, certain logic. It's talking about like things like if-else statements, right? Like those are pretty universal across every language. And so there's certain commonalities that you can draw. Once you know one language, it does make it easier to learn additional languages because there are those common threads that run through every single language out there. Chat says, is 100 devs related to Free Code Camp? No. Um, However, Free Code Camp is another excellent resource. 100 devs is its own separate group. 100 devs is has more of a community aspect, I would argue. Free Code Camp has some excellent lessons, but they're very self-driven. 100 devs is more of a community guided experience. You can go through the lessons together as a group. And there's a very robust Discord where everybody can work together. You can find groups to work with, and during actual cohorts, there are actually live classes on Twitch led by the fantastic and charismatic Leon Noel, who is kind of the head instructor for 100 Devs. Fantastic, charismatic, intelligent person. And Leon leads those classes live, and everybody goes through the information together. Quinn Sub said, were there any updates or announcements from stand up last week? I couldn't get audio to work. Leon did announce that there will be some, that Leon is planning on doing some streams on ChatGPT specifically, hopefully sometime in June here. So that's what I recall. Han says, do you have a good resource to design database tables not talking about SQL? Are you talking about NoSQL, like MongoDB? Not quite sure what you're asking for there. Presley says, Mindwolf, I've heard and seen people say they've sent close to 300 applications for tech jobs just to get interviews for less than five. How true is that? I would say it's very true if all you're doing is sending in applications and not doing anything else. The way to get in is the way to make hiring managers and recruiters see you as a person, is to, number one, have a great social media presence, have a good portfolio out there, and number two, friggin' talk to people at the companies you want to be a part of. Make connections, interface with those people, network with them, make them see you as an actual human with actual skills rather than just a resume with a bunch of stuff listed on it. Um, Networking is the way to do it. It really is. Clicking apply, yeah, you're going to get into the point where you put in 300 applications and only gotten five interviews. You know, if you can network and make connections with people, with anybody in the industry, they're going to say, oh yeah, my company has this opening for a full stack dev. I met this person last week and they showed me their portfolio. It was so cool. They had some really cool stuff on there. I'm going to see if maybe they want to be interested in interviewing with this company, with my company. That's how you get your foot in the door. Uzi says your knowledge on them is fantastic with all the classes you were doing. Well, part of that is just a commitment to continue learning. For me, and I think in general, what you find is that if you are teaching others, that helps give you a deeper understanding of the material. So, to be perfectly frank, when I first started out streaming, it was less about helping other people. It was more about making sure that I was actually doing the homework and understanding what was going on in the classes because I consider myself, I've bestowed on myself the title of the Queen of Procrastination because I am a worldwide expert on procrastinating and not doing things until the last minute unless I absolutely have to. And having a set stream schedule where I knew I was supposed to talk about the homework meant that I actually had to do the homework on time and get it done before it was due, because otherwise I just wouldn't do it. And so streaming really helped structure that for me, and then going through the homework and explaining it step by step meant that I had to really understand it step by step. And so people ask me, oh, you understand it so well. That's because I actually had to understand it in order to teach it on stream. So if you are having trouble with keeping yourself on task, with really getting a good understanding of the concepts, try helping somebody else with it. Try walking somebody else through it. Try streaming about it, and that will tell you what you do and don't understand. Yeah, Leon also, yes, Leon Noel, the head instructor of 100 Devs, also has great hair. Absolutely, yes, fantastic hair. Dan says, "Hey, Mindwolf, how's the 100 Devs agency thing shaping up? I don't know. Um, I don't really have an inside track to the mod group in 100 Devs. I'm absolutely a community educator with 100 Devs, but I don't have that inside track, nor do I particularly want it. They do great work. I'm not there to look over their shoulder or anything like that. I'm sure it's coming along, and I can't wait for it to start so I can contribute to it. Data says, why are so many streamers obsessed with Twitch API coding, OBS coding, and coding Discord bots? I think the coders may be distracted by their own problems and not focused on the community's problems. I think that streamers stream about things that are fun for them to stream about. Um, because it's they're just devoting their own time to streaming about things that are fun for them, and sometimes things that are fun for them are messing around with Twitch's API. I mean, I don't know. If I'm going to stream, I'm going to stream about something that's fun for me. If I'm going to go up in front of a bunch of people and talk to those people, it's going to go a lot better if it's something that I'm having fun with. Um, and so I guess they do those things because those things are fun and they like messing around with APIs and building Discord bots. I think building Discord bots is a really cool thing. Um, as far as the community's problems, I don't know exactly what you're referring to there. If they don't have a healthy community, then hopefully they have a good mod team that can help them clean up that community. But I mean, heck, some people stream, I don't know, poker or, well, I guess that got banned, but people stream about anything and everything. People stream about themselves playing the guitar. People stream about, you know, playing Pokemon or any of those things better than the other as far as content goes? I wouldn't say so. I would say content is always going to fill a particular niche for a particular person, right? Some folks want to watch people play Pokemon or play the guitar or just watch, some birds, somebody's pet birds sit on perches and sing for an hour. I mean, that's it. All the content is out there and you can choose what it is you want to watch. I think that's the cool thing about Twitch. It's all there. You get to pick. Han says, what's the process to learn to design a database table from scratch? Let me think. Decent resource for that. I mean, I would honestly just Google how to design database tables. Just Google that. Google how to design database tables from scratch and look up some of those resources. If you see a particular blog post or an article that cites a book, then maybe you want to go check out that ebook from the library and read that. Um, I would Google how to design database tables from scratch. Arwen says procrastination stream coming soon. Danny says their audience may or may not be super interested in OBS details, but the streamer is. So they get to pick the content that they stream, right? I think there's a danger when you're streaming in what we call parasocial relationships, and that's where there can be it's kind of an artificially close connection created between the streamer and their audience. And so I would look up parasocial relationships, and that the audience can come to have a level of control or over the streamer that is not necessarily healthy for the streamer or for the audience, right? Um, and it's cool to banter back and forth with chat and to have a relationship and to have chat have some say into what that to have chat have can vote on content or what do we want to stream next or ask questions or give comments or feedback. But in the end, the streamer is the one creating the content, and they should have the freedom and the ability to stream about stuff that they want to stream about, right? My opinion as a streamer. Because I'm sure that, chat out there, there's a lot of folks that would love me to stream 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, right? That would be awesome. That would allow, that would allow my audience from all over the world to tune in whenever they want and to see stuff that I'm doing and to build all these different projects and all that sort of thing. But I'm not going to do that because that's not healthy. And so there's always a level of distance and boundaries that have to be set in order to keep the relationship healthy for both chat and the streamer. Thank you for the follow, Nick. Thank you for the follow, Parrot GT and Pragma Cloud. Thank you all. Mommy said I would stream a bunch of dumb projects that solve nobody's problem. Hey, and that's your right to do so. You're the one creating the content, right? Thank you for the follow, Telekinesis. That's a cool name. Telekinesis makes me think of Control, which is a great game. So great name, great game. I love it. Dan says we're lucky this stream isn't 24/7 SQL or Excel. Evidence Mindwolf cares about the community. Yeah, y'all. You all heard before how excited I got about pivot tables? You're lucky that's not all I stream about. Uzi says, I went to a meetup a week ago. I was getting grilled by other developers as to why people would pick me over WordPress or Squarespace. That's rude. Um, so I'll tell you this: if I'm looking at a WordPress or Squarespace site, I can usually tell that it's a WordPress or Squarespace site, but that which is not a bad thing, right? It does what it says on the tin. But it's also easy to build a bad, poorly optimized site in WordPress or Squarespace. And so I think your response to that is like, if they want a site that's just off the rack and super generic, um, and takes them a long time to build and customize to the way they want it, then that's perfectly fine. They're allowed to do that. But if they want a site that is built with love and care and crafted to their specific specifications, um, then they can utilize your skill set in order to do that. It's the customer's choice, right? They can absolutely pick Squarespace or whatever, but you have a level of skill that can create a truly custom, noticeable, customer tailored project, right? The end result is going to be better with the human touch. Nick, thank you for the follow. Oh, yeah, I already thank you, but I'll thank you again. Thank you, Nick. Dr. Moto says, I've seen a lot of WordPress sites where it's super easy to get into the admin account. Yeah, it's another great point. With a widely used platform like that, there's also going to be some vulnerabilities that are going to exist in that platform. No worries, Quinn Saab. Good to see you. Yeah, it's sort of like with anything. If you're talking about, well, why couldn't I just use WordPress? Yeah, you could, right? It's sort of like, am I going to go, you know, buy a suit from Target, or am I going to go and get a suit custom tailored to fit me? Um, you could do either one. Nobody's stopping you. But the custom tailored bespoke suit is always going to fit and look better than the suit you get off the rack at Target. Does Target sell suits? I don't know. And Dan says, anyone who's taken a look at their server's request logs know that bots love to check for WordPress URLs. Yes, WordPress is such a widely used platform that it is going to be hella exploited. Yep. Yeah, people are always trying to hack it because they know where it is. Uh-huh. Yeah. Anything that gets so widely used is going to be widely exploited. Yeah. I'm going to hydrate real quick. Hmm. Today I've got my NASA mug. Feeling good? Zayton says, hello, mine. Carmen here. Hi, Carmen. I'm in class 21. I'm struggling to do the homework. I waste a lot of time trying to figure things out, so I started seeing the answers and trying to understand them. But they also take me a chunk of time. But I feel it's more efficient. I'm not sure if that would be the correct approach. So as far as the homework, I'm sorry, I don't quite recall class 21. What are you doing in class 21? Can you tell me about the assignment? Sirius says, talking about, I asked whether they sell suits at Target, and Sirius says, closest they come is button up shirts and some ties. Okay, fair enough. But the analogy still stands. You can buy a suit off the rack at, I don't know, what's that? Brooks, not Brooks, what's the one with the, you're going to like the way you look, that one? You can buy a suit off the rack or you can have it tailored. The tailored one is always going to look and fit you better. We're doing a race. Okay, so you're actually doing like homework questions, right? Men's Warehouse, that's it. So you're doing like actual like homework, specific homework questions related to arrays. Is that right, Carmen? Yeah. Okay. So so Carmen, I would say the best approach is, yeah, you're not always going to know the answer right off the bat, and that's fine. Um, what I would do is set yourself a timer. Give yourself a chunk of time to attempt the question without looking at the answer. But once that timer goes off, I would give 20 to 30 minutes just looking at the question and seeing if you can solve it. And at the end of that time, if the timer goes off and you haven't solved it, write down what you know or what you think you know. Maybe you know the method, but you're not sure how to apply it or something like that. Or you can kind of like talk about it in words. So write that down. Like, okay, this is kind of what I think. And then look at the answer and understand the answer. And by that, I mean, don't just read it. So try to see, okay, they took this method, and then the next step was, okay, and then they did this. And okay, and then try to talk through it and see, like, okay, I understand how they did this now. Okay, that's the answer. I understand why. And then after you're finished looking at it, put the answer away, go back to the question, and solve it the way that they did, except you write the answer yourself. So write the answer yourself. See if you can remember how they did it and why. Write that out. If you don't, that's okay. Spend, I don't remember. I forget why. Why did they do that? Maybe you get partway through it this time. That's okay. And then go back to the answer, look at it again, see what you missed, and then go back and try to solve it again with their answer and do it the way that they did. And then after that, put the question away and then come back the next day and see if you can solve it again. That's applying a few different techniques. Um, it's applying active recall. It's applying spaced repetition. If you did the Learning How to Learn course, you'll know what I mean by those things, by those phrases. And so, if you didn't, then you should. But you can look those things up. But that's applying a few different learning techniques that will help cement those things in your head. So the next time you see that particular method or that particular type of question, you'll know the answer because it'll be in your brain. Okay, good. So you know what I'm talking about. Good job, Carmen. I'm glad you did the course. Yeah. So that's really the practical application of those things that were talked about in Learning How to Learn. So I think the most important takeaways there, Carmen, is to limit yourself in the time that you spent trying to just solve the question without looking at the answer. If you can't do it in 20 or 30 minutes, take it easy on yourself. Stop, look at the answer, understand the answer, go back to the question, try to apply it, and then, all right, solve it the way that they did. Put the question away, come back to it the next day, and do it again. Interleaving. We need the interleaving to learn. Yeah, it's absolutely. Uzi said, Mind Wolf, have you tried? Codinggame.com. Pretty fun. I haven't. But yeah, I can check it out. Yeah, I haven't tried that one. I did a lot of Code Wars back in the day when I was first learning methods and that kind of thing. Code Wars were a great way to, really get those methods in my brain. Yeah, and Code Wars also has some guided tutorials as well. They have sets of questions that help you build up a topic from start to finish. So you can search for those in the practice area. And Skullcrusher says, what helps me, so when we're talking about homework problems, Skullcrusher says, what helps me is I have to work through what my attempts to solve the question did and why they were wrong. They did something, just not what I needed it to do. Yeah, absolutely, Skullcrusher. And I would agree that, that's why I mentioned that even if you can't get the answer, you should write down what you do know. Even if it's just like, I think I should use, this method, or I need to flip this array and then, filter it. Like even if you're just writing it out in English words, that shows your train of thought. And then, like Soul Crusher said, you can look at the answer, compare it against your train of thought, and see, all right, was I on the right track, or was my why did my thoughts go down the wrong path here? What was the problem? No worries, Tech Two. It's late in the UK, yeah, because you all are like 5 hours ahead of Eastern time, right? So yeah, it is pretty late. You should go to bed. Thank you for stopping in, Tech Two. Zaytin says, yeah, it just feels kind of frustrating that I thought I understood everything I read, but when a task comes, it clearly did not stay in my brain. Yes, it never does. All the reading does is introduce you to the topic. It introduces you to the vocabulary and the concept. Application is a completely different beast. And I didn't learn that until I was out of college. Um, so, I mean, don't feel bad that that's not something that you knew. I didn't know it until, man, I was like out of college and actually working. I spent my entire college career thinking I could just read something and learn it. And yeah, that's wrong. The true test is in application. 11 p.m. right now. Yeah, that's what I thought, Uzi. Yeah. And yeah, Zayton, console logging. Yeah, console logging is your friend when you're trying to solve those. See what you get. Yep. Console log is absolutely your friend. EST gang. Yep. All right. Wow, time flies. Golly gee. It's about 6 o'clock here in the US. So we're probably going to wrap up soon here in about 30 minutes or so. I just want to give time for last topics, last questions, that kind of thing. Um, it's been a fantastic conversation. I love these Q&A streams. They're always so much fun. I never know what we're going to talk about beforehand. Um, and we always talk about cool stuff that I don't know. It always gets my brain working. And I don't know. I love these Q&A streams. So keep it coming. We're gonna go another 30 minutes or so, and then we'll wrap it up. But yeah, these streams are so much fun, and I realized, man, I hadn't done one in like 2 or 3 months, and that's too long. We got to do these more often. Dan says chickpeas or garbanzo beans. I love I love chickpeas slash garbanzo beans. By the way, I think I normally what do I normally call them? The cans that I buy at the store say garbanzo beans, um, but I think I call them chickpeas. I never really thought about that before. Man, deep questions. Jeez. So, oh, I also learned that you can make a really delicious snack by taking your chickpeas slash garbanzo beans, and you drain them off, you dry them off a little bit. You put them in a bag with a little bit of oil and like seasoning, whatever kind of seasoning you like, and then you pop them in the air fryer at like 350 for like I forget how long. I gotta look up the recipe. But yeah, you can pop them in the air fryer and you make little crunchy dried chickpeas. They're so good. Only the hard hitting questions. Reluctant Genius says lentils. So lentils are actually different. That's a different type. They're also a legume, but that's actually different. Lentils are small, round, and flat. Also delicious, by the way. Lentils are small, round, and flat. Chickpeas or garbanzo beans are larger, like spheres, like little spheres that are kind of have like a savory flavor. So yeah, it's a different type. Falcon says, question, what's your ideal pet? Uh, I like a lot of different animals. I think my ideal pet is probably a traditional, like domesticated animal, such as a cat or a dog, um, because those types of animals are truly domestic. They aren't, like, for example, they aren't wild creatures that we are artificially imprisoning in our homes for our own amusement. Cats and dogs are, bred to be companions to us. So I would say a cat or a dog because they're meant to be around us. They aren't animals that we're capturing and forcing to be around us. They want to be there. C Film says, "What is a peanut? Delicious when combined with chocolate." Dan says, "Mindful, have you played with React Native or any other way of coding mobile apps?" I have not played around with mobile. Um, I got to see somebody do cool stuff with React Native at a conference that I went to recently. She was doing some like we had like a hackathon, and she was doing wild stuff building out a mobile app. It was really cool. Um, but I haven't experienced myself. I've just admired from afar somebody else doing it. Chad says, I don't get my beans or peas canned. I get them dry and soak them overnight. Yeah, absolutely. I do that sometimes too. Most of the time, I'm too lazy. I'll just be honest. So I get them canned. Garbanzo sounds like the name of a circus clown. It does. Baffin says, cats are not super domesticated. That's true. They aren't. But they at least like being around us. So I figure that makes them valid pets. Some cats do, some don't. Dan says, Mine Wolf, what's your favorite way of note taking? Is there an app you use? Yeah, so I don't have a particular app that I use, but I will use whatever app allows me to view my notes, where take my notes digitally and view them wherever I want. So, for example, for work, like documentation at work, a lot of times I'll use OneNote. It's not trendy or cool, but Microsoft OneNote is accessible pretty much anywhere. You can view it on mobile, you can do it in the browser, you can do it on desktop, and all it syncs. Your notes will sync across everywhere. So, I mean, I use OneNote for all my work stuff. Um, for personal stuff, I use a variety of things. Google Keep, uh, you generally Google services, whatever's convenient. I will use for notes, for personal notes. Reluctant says, I love OneNote. I use it every day. Yeah, honestly, it's not like cool, but it works really well for what it's built for, which is taking notes. Seafoam says, a peanut is not a nut. It's actually a legume. Yep, it is. Frankly says, as a SQL dev, did you learn about database normalization, and are you in a position to use it? Yeah. So not, I mean, it's not something I do all the time, but we are always thinking about ways to. So a lot of what I do is what's called building data pipelines. And so that means taking data from a source location, doing stuff to it. So changing fields around, combining tables together, uh, you know, putting data in certain places, and then loading that data into an output location where the customers can access it. So we call it extract transform load, ETL. That's probably an acronym you'll see sometimes. ETL, that means extract transform load. Extract it from the source, do stuff to it, load it into an accessible location. And so some of what I do when I'm doing that process is thinking about what is the logical way to put this data in the load destination and make it accurate, efficient, and accessible. And so there is some normalization that goes on there. Whereas, for example, we use something called Kimball design principles, which is not something you have to know about, but some of that involves splitting data apart into like measurement numeric values and sort of attribute values, so descriptive values that aren't numeric and can't be summed or added together or have mathematical operations performed on them. And so we split that apart, and the numeric data can access the attribute values, but the attribute table is much smaller because it doesn't have any duplicate rows. And so that's an application of normalization. Now that might be a bit too like, whoa, whatever, high level, but yes, normalization is part of the job. Um, and fortunately, we do have a set of rules that help us determine those things. It's not something we have to think about on the fly. It's more of like, oh, yep, this is this type of value. It needs to go in this type of table. And so, yeah, it's just part of the job. Chat says, did you get a CS software engineer or any degree before doing 100 devs? Nope. I've before 100 devs, I had never taken any kind of a coding class, developer class, none of that. And you don't need to. It's not required in the slightest. Nor is it required to get a job in software engineering. Not at all. Thank you for the follow, Magic. Cronbon says, big fan of OneNote for taking notes. It's the best cross platform app I found. It is really good for cross platform. That's why I like it a lot. Because what I'll do is, I'll take a note on the desktop version of OneNote on my work computer because we have the desktop version. And then if I want to access that note, say on this machine that I'm on right now, my personal machine, I just go to the browser version of OneNote and pull it up there. Or I can open it up on my phone and look at it there. And it all just syncs and works, which I really appreciate. And Sirius says Notion is another good one. Yep. A lot of people do use Notion as well. Dan says, so you're a SQL plumber. Yeah, kind of. I build pipelines. Yep, absolutely. It's all about getting the data from start to finish and making modifications to it along the way. Reluctant says, is that what data scientists do? Some scientists may do that, but a lot of what data scientists and data analytics analysts do is more about taking that end result and gaining insights from it. And that's not what I do in my current role. I've done that in the past. I've been an analyst before. And so essentially, I didn't, as an analyst, I didn't build any of the pipeline. I didn't build any of the infrastructure. I just looked at the end result and gained insights from that to, then make policy decisions and things like that. But now that I'm a developer, I build the infrastructure based on what the customer says they want. And then I don't care what they do with it. They could never look at it again, and I wouldn't care. As long as it looks right to them, I'm going to sign off on it. I'm not going to look into what it's doing or what it's for. I'm just going to give it to them and go on to the next thing. So that's the difference. Reluctant says, why does every job resume require bachelor's? Is it just recruiters not know? Yeah, and they don't know. That shouldn't stop you. It's that's sort of a traditional requirement. It's slowly going away. Um, yeah, it's not necessary. If you can demonstrate your skills, then they're going to overlook the fact that you don't have a software engineering degree. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? As I said, fantastic conversation so far. We've been going for over 3 hours now without a break, by the way. I realized we didn't take any breaks, but that's because I haven't felt tired or anything so far because y'all have been keeping me so entertained. Chat, how do you keep track of the last message in chat you responded to in your mind? That is a new question. I've never been asked that one before. So I'm not reading the chat that you see on your screen. That's on the window that I'm showing you. I have a separate chat display that's on like outside of the visual display that you see. And so that scrolls up, and everybody's name is a different color, and I kind of just keep track of it that way. Yeah, it is a mental. I have a mental stopping point, which is the last message that I read. And so if I lose track of chat, I'll just go back up to the last thing I read because I know what it was, and I'll scroll through and read. But I can scroll through chat independently of what you see on your screen. So if I get behind, I just scroll up, I go to the last messages I read, and then I catch up. Sometimes over time. But good question. I've never had anybody ask me that before. Yeah, and most streamers will have a similar setup. They'll have, so normally I would be showing you something on my main screen, and then I have a secondary monitor where I have all of my technical stuff, where I have all of my stream controls, where I have my band hammer, where I have, the ability to change screens like this or like this. Um, and do those technical type behind the scenes things. So most folks who are streaming will have two monitors, one for sharing content and the other for technical stream controls. I have seen some people who do it with one monitor, and I am highly impressed because that's really difficult to do. Michael says, are you manually scrolling through a separate version of the chat and just going one message at a time? Yeah, but I read really fast. That may not be how everybody does it. Some folks might just look at the most recent message and skip some message in between. I read really quickly, so I can skim really fast and and respond to. Or I read every message. I may not respond to all of them, but I do look at every single one. Reluctance says, "How long did you study to become a dev, and how quickly did you find a job?" Uh, I didn't study to be a dev. I don't have a CS background or any kind of classes. Um, I actually did 100 devs, which is a like a coding boot camp. I did that after I was already a dev. Um, so I didn't take any kind of CS classes or any pursue any kind of CS goals in college. My degree is actually in statistics with a minor in English. Um, and we did all of our statistics stuff on paper by hand with calculators. So didn't even learn any like R or anything. Unfortunately, I wish I would have. Um, so yeah, it wasn't really applicable there. I learned everything I know about SQL on the job in various non-dev jobs that I had ever since I graduated from college. So I've been doing analytics a lot. Out of college, a little bit of operations, and all those things do involve SQL to some degree. And so I just kept picking up more and more SQL skills up until the point where my coworker actually convinced me to apply to a SQL dev job. She was like, "Why aren't you a dev already? You already do a bunch of stuff with software. You already, you use SQL. Like, why the frick won't you apply to be a developer?" And I'm like, "But I don't have a CS degree." And she's like, "Yeah, screw that. Go ahead and just be a dev." And I'm like, "Okay." And so I kind of went into it thinking I wasn't going to get the job, and I did. So it was all about skill. It wasn't about how many years did you study. It was all about me being able to interview well and demonstrate my ability to perform. Michael BC says, "I would make a program that updates the UI by one message. Oh, every time I press space or something. Oh, I would not want to do that. That's way too much effort. Chat scrolls automatically for me, and so I can just scroll up and down as much as I want. If I was pressing the space bar every time y'all said something, that would be really annoying. Personally, call me Carl. Thank you for the follow. Chris says, "You really got to utilize your multiple desktop environment if available on Win 11 or Mac OS if you have one screen. I usually feel naked and afraid without two monitors minimum." Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually looking at getting a third monitor so I can have one monitor for the content that I show you guys. So, like the project that we're working on, one monitor for all of my notes and like the finished version that I can reference if I need to, and then a third monitor for all of the technical controls that I was telling you about earlier, the chat, the banhammer, the redemptions, the screen controls, that kind of thing. So I'm thinking about a three setup. I haven't pulled the trigger on it yet, but that's the plan. Frankly says languages are important, but cold beer is important. Sure, whatever floats your boat. Skull Question says SQL Saturday is my favorite SQL research. Okay, I haven't looked up SQL Saturday. Is that a YouTube channel or what is that? I'm curious. And it looks like we're slowing down a little bit here in chat. We got some folks dropping off, which is perfectly fine. So unless there's other questions, we'll probably think about wrapping up here soon. Reluctant Genius says, "What do you know besides SQL and JavaScript?" Yeah, so HTML, CSS, React, TypeScript. Um, I also know some VBA for building Excel macros, which is also a really fun thing to do. But yeah, I mean that's kind of the extent of my skill set. But I also know additional tools such as Informatica Power Center for building those data pipelines that we talked about. So it's less about the number of languages that you know, and more about what can you do with them, right? It's not it's not about quantity, it's about quality. You can know a bunch of languages but not know how to apply any of them, or build things with them. And so I think that I've learned so much in the past few years that, and I could build so many cool things now that if I just stopped and didn't learn anything else other than what I've learned so far, I would be happy because I can do a crap ton with it. Like with those languages that I have, I can do so much, and it's been so much fun. Sachin says, "What do you think on ultra wide monitors?" I think they're fine. I think if you get too wide, you can start to lose track of content. I had a manager one time that had like a single monitor, but their monitor was like a 50-inch television or whatever, and it got to the point where like he was having a lot of trouble like keeping track of things on the monitor. Um, and so I prefer like a multi-monitor setup, maybe more monitors with smaller, a slightly smaller footprint. I don't know, it's personal preference though. Obviously a third monitor, you're just giving me excuses to spend money. Hey, buy all the monitors you want. Sirius says I have a 34-inch ultra wide and two 27-inch side 4K monitors. Whoa, Nelly. I have, so my main monitor is not even, it's not 4K, it's whatever the next step down is, QHD, UHD, I forget. It's higher than HD, but it's like beneath 4K. And that's plenty for me. And then the monitor that I have all my technical stuff on is like a 12-year-old 24-inch 1080p monitor. It's a workhorse, man. ViewSonic, baby. So I'm gonna keep that one, but I'd like to get another QHD, whatever, main monitor. Yeah, 1440p. That's right. It is. Yeah, it's 2K QHD. Yep, not full 4K. EC says she knows how to Google. Yeah, knowing how to Google is just as important as knowing a language. If you can Google effectively, you can find out anything you need. SQL Saturday is a global meetup group. It has monthly meetings, usually locally. Each venue usually has a yearly free meetup with a bunch of folks, including Microsoft MVPs, teaching about MS SQL. Wow, thank you for sharing that, Skull Crusher. I didn't know about SQL Saturday. I'm gonna have to look that up now. That sounds really fun. There's probably a group near me. I should check it out. I would be totally keen on that. That sounds awesome. SQL Saturday went through some restructuring lately and are adding a bit of Postgres as MS Azure has put a bit of work into hosting Postgres as it's gained popularity. That's awesome. I'm glad. They should. Postgres is a great, non-proprietary version of SQL. So that makes it a great first flavor of SQL for folks to learn because it's not proprietary. And so I appreciate that Microsoft is accepting. Microsoft has done a great job of accepting like open source alternatives in general. I feel I like what Microsoft is doing in that space overall. Sirius says they do video editing. Oh, okay, that means the ultra wides are going to help you out there. Sirius says I like to put one of the 4Ks into portrait so I can see more code. Yeah, that's a great way to do it too. You can just spin her around and look at that code vertically. Frankly says, when did you last vacuum the inside of your monitor or computer? Dust kills electronics. So on my tower, I have like it's got the glass like plexiglass side or whatever, so I can see inside of it and I can see how much what my dust situation is that I got going on. And so I vacuum the outer vents a lot, but so far the inside has stayed fairly clean. I run air purifiers in my house, so things stay fairly dust free. It's not perfect though. But yes, it is important to make sure that the inside of your tower or your laptop is not getting clogged up with dust. Absolutely. Sirius says, I just dusted my main machine yesterday and made me wish for the 200th time for a compressor. Was it like ANH says, I skipped my annual computer clean out last Christmas. I'm scared to look inside. If you don't open it up, it doesn't exist, right? It's like it's Schrodinger's tower. It only gets dusty if you actually look at it. Chat says, what also helped you beat procrastination other than streaming, honestly, it was mostly streaming. But it doesn't have to. You don't have to start streaming. The magic message here is not start streaming to stop procrastinating. It's more about getting something to hold you accountable to get the work done. Um, for me, it was streaming because people were expecting me to, on a Wednesday, they were like, okay, Mayan's going to be covering homework 12 or whatever. And oh, okay, I have to have homework 12 done in time to talk about it on stream. Um, and but it could be having a buddy, somebody that you check in with once a week. It could be a group that you meet up with every Saturday to talk about the homework and make sure you understand the concepts or talk about what you're struggling with. It could be, your brother that gives you a call every Friday morning and asks you what you got done that week. It's really just something to hold you accountable because it takes, people don't think about this, but it takes a lot of mental energy to be motivated, right? To get your body moving takes a lot of mental energy, and not all of us have that mental energy. And so, what we need to do is offload that effort that it takes to get ourselves moving. We need to offload that onto an external source of some kind, whether that's a stream schedule or an app that we use, or a calendar, or your brother, or an accountability group. We need to offload that off of ourselves. Understand that we don't have the energy to keep ourselves motivated all the time, which is fine. It's okay. Offload that onto an external source, which will give you more energy to actually get the things done when that external source is telling you to get them done. I hope that makes sense. So it's not about the stream; it's about where you put your energy. And Chris suggested a poll. I'm deciding on what to release next related to music stuff. Should the next 100 Devs artist single release be a synthwave or pop punk track? Both tracks are near completion. Okay, yeah, Chris, do you mind if we do that poll next time? I want to make sure we get the largest amount of feedback. We're kind of trailing off toward the end here, so do you mind if I table that poll for next week's stream? Okay. Pop punk. Got one vote from Sirius. That would be fun. Yeah, and Drunk Uncle Grandma says scheduling breaks and days off helps me keep my mind on working during my work days. Yeah, and if we're talking about energy here, um, just like with any appliance that has a battery in it, you need to take time to charge that battery. And humans are no different. We are batteries in ourselves. We need to take time to recharge our mental energy. Once we're recharged, we need to take ourselves off the charger and go back to work. Golden Lion says, "Have you ever done Advent of Code?" I have not personally, but I know a lot of folks have a lot of fun with it every year. And again, that's another external source of motivation, right? It's so you don't have to think about what do I want to work on today, what do I want to learn today. You can say, what does Advent of Code want me to learn today? I'm going to do that. So it helps you save that mental energy. And Carmen says, I found that if I have a physical to do list on my desk, it helps me to do the things that I need to do instead of wasting time. Sure, some folks do great with physical to do lists. It's all about also finding the right the right external source of motivation. For some folks, it'll be a list. For some folks, it'll be a calendar. For some folks, it'll be their friend or like an actual human. For some folks, it'll be a schedule with obligations, like it is for me. It's different for everybody. Some you might try something, it won't work. That's okay. Try something else. Good. I'm glad that makes sense for you, Chat. Yeah, Rascal 2, the tremendous Rascal 2, does do Advent of Code every year. Also, by the way, we do give them a quick shout out. They are Rascal 2 is an absolute genius. Um, and is it Rascal underscore 2? Yeah, it is, isn't it? And they are always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to watch them work. So you should definitely check them out um, if you haven't already. They have great content. And they're a really nice person, too. What would Mine Wolf do? WWMDs. Ooh, that's an awkward acronym. Michael says Advent was really fun. Yeah, yeah. I've heard it is really fun. Okay, folks, let's go ahead and wrap things up. We're going to find somebody to raid. Oh, also, I forgot to say happy Pride Month to everybody out there. And I hope you are going to, I'm sure you're going to have an excellent month this month. But yes, happy Pride to everybody out there. Oh, Discord, here. I don't have a personal Discord. I operate out of the 100 Devs Discord. So I just put a link for it there in chat. Feel free to check that out. It's super active. You'll find me hanging around there and a lot of other great people as well. All right, 1 second. We're going to find somebody to raid. If you have any suggestions, as always, um, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I am going to be looking for somebody. I'm going to be looking for some. Got to mute myself there. All right, we got a couple folks online. We've got Team Vash and Ambivalent Bunny. I don't think we've rated Ambivalent in a while. Let's see what they're up to. Ooh, they look like they are building something. If you want to check them out, I'm not seeing any suggestions from many folks, so I'm thinking we might check out Ambivalent. We just did Team Vash. We did Team Vash fairly recently, so lovely to see you as well, Fafin. I hope you have a good week. Ambivalent. All right, let's go check them out. The raid will be starting here momentarily. I will see you all back here again next Sunday. Thank you again for the wonderful discussion we had today. I had a super fun time. I always do. You always come with the best questions, the best topics. And so we're going to have to do this again in a month or two and have another chat. But as always, see you again next Sunday. We're going to be doing something. We're going to be building something. We're going to be building a project of some kind. So come back next week for a fun project. Or some fun new topic that we're all going to learn together. All right, raid is starting now. Ready to raid in 5 seconds. See you all next Sunday. Bye bye.